Ma'am, could you please state your full name for the record and spell your last name?
Yes, my name is Beverly Morris, Morris.
Thank you.
Ms. Morris, what is your occupation?
I'm a school teacher. I've been with San Diego Unified School District since 1975. I teach second grade at Sequoia Elementary.
Do you know the lady here at the end of the council table, Betty Broderick?
Yes, I do.
And do you remember how you met Betty?
Yes, there were a group of young children in 1985 who wanted to be on a soccer team. And at that time, they were short of coaches. And although Mrs. Broderick didn't have any special skills in soccer, she did step forward to give her time and energy and effort to coaching soccer. And that's how I met her, because my son was a member of her team.
And do you remember what year this was?
In 1985.
Okay. And in showing you what has been marked as defense KK for identification, do you recognize this photograph?
Yes.
Okay. And was this the team?
Yes, it was.
Did was any of Mrs. Broderick's children on the team?
Yes, her son Rhett was on the team, our youngest.
Did you know whether Rhett was living with her at the time?
No, he wasn't. He was residing with his father at that time.
Okay. And were there times when Rhett did not attend the soccer activities?
Yes, many, many times.
Okay. And how would Mrs. Broderick respond to this?
Well, what happened was there were a series. Pardon me? I didn't hear you.
Just rephrase the question, or re-ask the question, Mr. Earl.
Okay. What were the schedules for the team? I mean, when would the team play games? When would they practice?
We practiced on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we had our games on Saturdays.
And how did Betty respond to when her son would not be at the practices?
She would respond with a tremendous amount of frustration, humiliation. She was very apologetic to the other players and to us, the parents, because she would go and try to pick up.
Objection, Your Honor, that calls for hearsay.
Sustained.
Did Rhett attend all the games?
No, he didn't. He attended about half of them, 50% of them.
Would there be times when she would be late for practices and games when Rhett was not able to attend?
Yes. Because the reason why,
Objection, Your Honor.
You answered the question. That's what
yes,
it
she
is.
was late.
Did you ever see Mr. Broderick in any of the practices or the games?
Never.
Did Mrs. Broderick, when her son wasn't able to be there, did she still attend the activities and do the coaching?
Yes, she did. She always attended the practices and the games, even though she was unable to pick up her son.
And was she teaching at the time the children were there, was she teaching them the concepts and the values of the soccer league?
Yes, she was. She was an excellent coach
Okay.
who taught a great deal more than just the game. She was very good at sportsmanship and positive reinforcement.
Did you ever hear her use profanity around the children?
Never.
Was her behavior inappropriate?
Never.
And what did you see of the relationship with her son at that time?
Oh, Brett adored his mother. He loved her very much. He was very proud of her, of course, because she was the soccer coach, and he had a very close bond with his mother, and it was great.
I have no further questions.
Cross-examine?
Mrs. Morris, just to clarify, this was back in, soccer season back in 1985, correct?
Mhm.
So as far as you knew, this was shortly after the separation between the defendant and her ex-husband.
Apparently, yes, I don't know.
And you were not aware of the situation, were you aware of any of the details of how the living situation came to be, how the children came to be living with their father?
No,
What the situation was with them at that particular time?
I knew that she was going through a divorce,
Okay,
but that was all.
I don't have any questions.
Redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Witness be excused.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
All right, call Beverly Broderick to the stand.
You do solemnly swear the testimony about to give and the matter not pending for this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Now, could you please have a single witness stand?
Good morning, ma'am. How are you?
Morning, fine, thank you.
And ma'am, could you please state your full name for the record and spell your last name?
My name is Beverly Jean Dewart, Dewart.
Thank you.
Stuart, what is your occupation?
At the present time, I'm the purchasing agent for Francis Parker School.
Okay. And did you have any other position with Francis Parker in the past?
Yes, I've been an employee since 1970, and up until 3 years ago, I was employed at the Randolph Street campus in the main office, and I worked with the director of admissions.
Okay. And are you familiar with Danny and Rhett Broderick?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And are you familiar with the lady down here again, Betty Broderick?
Yes, sir.
How would, from when you saw Mrs. Broderick at the school, how would you describe her?
I first met the Brodericks in 1981 when they enrolled the two older girls. At that time, very striking family, close, beautiful, well-mannered, well-addressed, clean, gracious.
Was she someone, when you saw her at the time they started there, someone who was wearing expensive clothes and jewelry all the time?
Yes, sir.
Did you see any changes in Mrs. Broderick over the years?
Yes, sir.
And how did she change?
She would show up at school not dressed as nicely as she had previously. She had gained weight, quote, let herself go, no self-assurance, frustrated, anxious,
Now,
not always patient,
was she involved in the children's school activities?
very much so, almost on a daily basis.
And was that something that continued up until 1989?
I left the lower school campus in the year of '88 to go to the upper school, so I really didn't see much of her then, except when she came up to the upper school campus to pick up Danny at that time.
Was she involved in the school activities
Yes,
that parents get involved in?
yes, sir, very
And-
much so.
How would you describe that? Was she minimally involved?
No, she was very active, very, very active. Always somebody's room mother or the member of the Mothers Club at that particular time. And always went on the field trips as a chaperone and always wanted to be able to go even when they had to let other parents have a turn. But she was very anxious to spend time with her children.
Did you become aware at some point that the parents had separated and the children were living with their father?
Yes, sir, we were notified in the office.
Okay, did you notice a difference in Rhett's health after he was living with Mr. Broderick?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And what kind of problems was he having?
Well, when he'd come in off the bus, he usually came to me because he always needed to have his nose blown. And at that time, we noticed that he would come to school wearing the same clothes 2 days in a row. And in cleaning his nose, you could tell that he was not bathed on a regular basis. The dirt behind his ears was caked. His head needed shampooing. But he was always eager to come in the morning. It was like a routine.
Were there problems during the winter on cold and rainy days, the way that they were dressed to go to school after there was a separation in the family?
On occasion, they would come to school without jackets, but we generally would have something in the lost and found. But a lot of times they would come without jackets, he and Danny.
Was there, what's the usual procedure that you would do when a child is sent to the school sick?
Sometimes they would come to school sick, we call the family right away. And normally, after the separation, and we were informed that we were to notify Dan or his office when something would happen, we had to call him first. If we were unable to make contact, then we called Betty.
Okay. Was there any time that the children would have to stay in the office for some period of time because you couldn't reach Dan?
Yes.
Did you ever have any problems getting Betty Broderick to come?
No.
Okay. Did the children act different when their mother was going to pick them up rather than their father?
Only if they wanted to do something that they had been asked to at the last minute by a classmate. And then they'd ask her if they could go do this. And she didn't always want them to do it, but she usually let them go.
The problems that you saw as far as clothes and health and hygiene, was that problem ever apparent before the separation?
No, sir.
I have no further questions.
Cross-examine.
Good morning, Ms. Stewart. The contact that you're referring to was in 1986 and 1987 when Brett was in second and third grade, correct?
That's correct.
It's after that point that you moved on to
Yes,
the other
that's correct.
campus.
But I did know him up from the time he was 3 years old.
Oh, so you knew him up to that point, but that was the end.
Yes.
Okay. And when you're talking about the problems with his clothes, having a runny nose, that was during the second grade, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And were you aware at all about any tests that were done to determine whether he had allergies at the time? Were you aware at all of whether that problem got better after it was determined?
Yeah.
Were you aware at all of any conferences that his teacher had with Mr. Broderick about the problem and whether there was?
Yes, there were conferences that I did know that, but
Were
what
you-
transpired, I didn't know.
Okay. Were you aware of conferences with the principal or headmaster, David Glassy, and Mr. Broderick?
Yes, I knew that there were conferences.
Okay, so that they were in touch with Mr. Broderick and talking to him about it, and you then at that point left, so you don't know whether there was improvement in the problem, is that correct?
That's correct.
And it's not unusual for children to stay in the office for some period of time while you attempt to get in touch with either one of their parents, is
That's
that
correct.
I have no further questions.
Redirect. So the lawyer has more questions.
One moment. Sure. I have no further questions.
Witness be excused.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Call Marilyn off from your. Want to have a moment with her?
Certainly. You can step out in the hall if you want, Mr. Early.
Well,
You can step out in the hall if you want.
okay, if I can, Your Honor. Yes.
You do solemnly swear the testimony about to give in the matter of pending for this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Morning.
Morning.
Ma'am, could you please state your full name for the record and spell your last name?
Spell my last name.
State your full name and spell your last name.
Marilyn Olson, Olson.
Thank you.
So Olson, you know the lady at the end of the console table there, Betty Broderick?
Yes, I do.
And how did you happen to meet her?
I met Betty about 16 years ago when my son was in childcare with her. She was recommended by Lainey Carter, the professional grandmother at Scripps Memorial Hospital, who recommended her to do childcare. And so I took him there.
Did you, you did have her do childcare for your children?
Yes, not every day, but maybe once or twice a week.
Okay, and how long did that go on?
Oh, probably 2 years or more.
And how many children was that?
Just one at the time.
And how would you describe Mrs. Broderick at that time?
Well, she certainly had a very child-centered home and had a great situation for taking care of children, and seemed to have that be her foremost concern, and enjoyed the children a lot, did fun things, baked cookies. It was a lot of fun. I enjoyed her too.
Now, was she someone at that time that wore expensive clothes, flashy jewelry?
No, she just dressed normally, the way all of us dressed with children at that age.
The and how often did you would you say that you had contact with her during this time?
Oh, once a week, twice a week at the most.
And did you and your family socialize with the Brodericks at all?
A little later than that, we did socialize with them some.
Okay, when was that?
I had a little girl 6 years later. I remember that we were at a Christmas party at Betty's house, and so that was 6 years later.
Okay. And what kind of parties were they?
Well, in this case, a family party with lots of our mutual friends and children and families around. It was very, family-oriented type of activity.
Okay. Did you go to any parties after her separation? Did you become aware that she separated from her husband at some point?
Yes, I did. And I did go to parties at Betty's house.
Were they again family parties?
Yes, they were.
Okay. Were her children always there?
No, her children were not necessarily there. It was always a question as to whether they would arrive or not. And most often they did not.
From what you saw, how would you describe her involvement with her children?
Well, whenever I saw her with them, it was concerned and caring, but directive. A person who knew what she wanted for her children and was concerned that, it would work out for them and hoping it would be the right thing.
Was before her separation, when you first met her and through the early 80s, did Betty often make complaints about Dan, or how did that appear to you?
Well, before the separation, not really. I think we were all proud of our husbands. They all worked hard and they weren't around too much. And so we just, tried to make the best of it.
Okay. But there's nothing that sticks out to you that this was someone who was always complaining about her husband.
No.
The Did you become aware of, you were aware that they did separate in 1985?
Yes.
Okay, and did you at any times did you become closer to her more after she moved to Cali de Cielo?
Yes, when she moved there, that was only 2 blocks from where I lived, so I saw quite a bit more of her at that time. And so I was able to kind of track her moods and feelings during that time.
Did you notice any change in how she felt about herself or self-esteem while?
Well, yes, really pretty dramatically that, her life was going down the tubes basically, and she felt horrible and she looked horrible, and she was really quite taken up with this as a horrible process the whole time, and how she couldn't get out from under it. It was such a chess game, and she was always being cornered and in check and checkmate, and it just was very unbearable for her.
Okay. Did you notice any change in her spending habits?
Well, I didn't really see these things myself. I think she lived, outwardly rather normally.
The did you ever hear Betty use profanity?
Yes.
And can you explain under what circumstances you would hear that?
Well, usually when we would be talking about the frustrations of the difficult divorce and how she was so unable to defend herself in this adversarial system, and how she was anxious and frustrated, and more, and the language would start to come.
Yeah. Did you ever hear her use the words kill or threaten?
Yes.
Okay, and can you explain those circumstances?
Well, in that same context of the frustration and talking about what can you do, how horrible this is, you're trapped, you're the victim, you're the person who can't get out. Every time you turn, the system gets you in another corner, and there's another situation that develops, and the frustration level at that point would be such, she would say, I'm going to kill him. And I just, had to sort of nod my head.
Oh, sustained.
Okay. Did you ever hear her use profanity in front of her children?
Not really. I may have once. I don't recall any particular time. It was usually with just me as we talked about this.
Yeah.
And I would use it too.
Did she ever talk, was there any conversations about what she needed out of her divorce?
Well, she felt that she needed some resolution of what was going to happen to her, and that she needed the security. I think she was frustrated to think that it would never be possible to raise those 4 children the way she wanted to in a single parent family. She had standards that she wanted to maintain. And with one parent, it's not easy, but she wanted to know what was going to happen, and she wanted the children.
When you indicated that she felt she needed some resolution of the issues, you were aware that as of January of 1989, that there was a resolution of the issues, that she was aware of at that time, about her ownership of the house, about the amount of alimony that she was getting, about visitation schedule, about the property that she owned, about her retirement pension fund that she owned. You knew that there was a resolution of that as of January of 1989.
Well, my understanding was there was never a resolution about the children and what was going to really happen in that situation.
But there was a resolution about the financial things, and wasn't
Well,
that
I
what
wasn't party to that. I wouldn't know what that resolution would be. I mean, it's very complicated.
Okay, and the only things that you knew about the process of the divorce came from her telling you, correct?
Yes.
And she wouldn't necessarily tell you about what exactly was happening in court, or what the resolutions were about the financial matters.
No, she told me what she perceived was happening, and she was feeling victimized and very panicky and afraid.
She was feeling victimized by everyone. She was feeling victimized by Dan. She was feeling victimized by her attorney. She was feeling victimized by the judges. She was feeling
That's true.
victimized by her friends, just about everybody, correct?
I don't know about the friends, but about all those others, probably.
Your opinion is that Elizabeth Broderick has a very strong personality, correct?
Yes.
She's a very strong, intelligent, assertive person, right?
Conversationally. Mm-hmm.
You've indicated that she was also a very controlling person.
Yes, she likes to have control of a situation, and I think someone like that, I feel I myself am that kind of person. When you lose that kind of control, it's a very panicky feeling and it's very frightening. And you know, get a little crazy sometimes.
Okay. She never had any problems expressing her opinions about things, right? She was very assertive about her opinions.
Well, except when the men were around, she tended not to want to talk about issues, you know, only talk about the weather kind of thing. You don't talk about politics, religion, or anything too controversial because the men would not be perhaps as pleased.
So as far as your opinion is that she never talked about politics, investments, anything like that with other men?
No, I say when I was there.
You indicated that you went to a Christmas party prior to separation?
Mhm.
Okay, and that was a Christmas party where Dan dressed up as the Santa Claus? He was the.
No, it wasn't that one. There was another, or maybe maybe that was him. No, I don't think so.
You also indicated that you never saw Elizabeth Broderick depressed during this period of time. She was always strong and fighting, was your opinion.
Which period of time?
After separation?
Gosh, no. That was never anything I would say. She was very depressed, and she was gaining weight, and she was depressed.
Let me show you a defense investigative report, page 2, the first paragraph. If you could read the highlighted.
Never really saw Betty depressed. She just saw her strong and fighting. She did, however.
Excuse me.
Oh, you want all of it?
No, I didn't give you the correct, if you could just read that to yourself.
Oh.
This is referring to you, Mrs. Olson's statement.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And see if that refreshes your recollection about whether or not you ever.
But when was this?
You're talking about
I
after
stated,
separation.
noticed Betty became more fixated in the relationship with him. Couldn't seem to let it go.
Man, you need to read it to yourself.
Oh. Well,
Isn't it true that?
I just saw her acting out then and doing all the other things that relate to depression.
Okay, but at the time when you were originally interviewed, isn't it true that you said that you saw her becoming more and more fixated on her relationship with Dan, that she wouldn't let it go, and that you never saw her depressed, you just saw her strong and fighting?
Yeah.
That she was always very assertive, she sometimes acted zany. Is that your word? Zany?
I use that word, yes.
And that she became consumed with the whole process and with losing the relationship with Dan.
If that's what it says. But of course, depression has all those features in it, so I've learned more about depression since then.
Okay. Someone talked to you about that? Is that
No, I've read a lot about it. I actually wrote a paper on it 20 years ago that I pulled out the other day, and it was pretty amazing. It's right on.
you? Did she ever talk to you about the things that she was doing to cause any problems in the process? Did she talk to you about firing her attorneys, firing people who had been hired on her behalf?
Yeah, less about that than about her acting out. She talked about running into the door and pushing the car off the road and acting out situations that she was so angry and so frustrated and that kind of thing. So that to me goes into the depression. You either act it out or you internalize it.
And prior to the separation, it was also your opinion that she was very strong in the relationship between her and Dan Broderick. You described him as being a rather quiet, shy, cute man. The defendant was a dynamo and dramatic and seemed to be calling the shots.
Yeah, that's how I would have had that impression because I thought she was a very dynamic woman. And he seemed kind of like an overgrown fraternity boy.
Okay, and she seemed to be calling the shots about the relationship, correct? That was your statement.
Well, yeah, little dramatic, sure. But she seemed to know what was going on when I was around her.
I have no further questions.
Redirect.
Yes, sir. May we approach
Sure. Redirect.
Yes. The parties that you attended, those were parties that were family parties, where they were basically Betty's friends and children?
Yes, I would say a lot of them were lawyers' families, looking at it. I know a lot of those families, and they were Betty's friends and some others.
You didn't attend parties where there was just, where there were Dan's friends that were there as just lawyers?
No, my husband's not a lawyer, and so we were not invited to those parties.
No further questions.
Recross.
No, Your Honor.
Witness be excused.
No objection.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
We just see if Your Honor, if there's a witness present.
Certainly.
Your Honor, the witness called, she wasn't feeling well, but she was on her way. She called her at 9.
Well, why don't we just take the morning recess a little early then? It's all right with me.
Yes, and then I believe after that, there'll just be 1 or 2 witnesses, Your Honor.
So we're gonna get through before lunchtime?
You've seen how long the witnesses take.
I'm sure the jury's glad to hear that. I know I am. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll take our morning recess at this time. We'll be in a recess, we'll say, for approximately 15 to 20 minutes. When the witness arrives, I'll send my bailiff to get you. Please remember the admonition.
Ma'am, please state your full name for the record, start your last name.
Phyllis Jardel, Jardel.
Thank you.
Ma'am, do you know the lady at the end of council table here, Betty Broderick?
Yes, I do.
And when did you first, do you remember what year you first met Betty?
In the early 70s.
Okay. And how did the two of you happen to meet?
She was working at St. Columba, and my husband's Aunt Joan was a teacher there, and she asked me if I would babysit her daughters.
Okay. And where were you living at that time?
On Mission, on Melbourne Drive.
Just what part of town?
Sarah Mesa.
Okay. And was that a private school?
Yes, it was.
Okay. And what grades did it go through, do you know?
I think 9th grade at that time.
Okay. And what grade was she teaching?
I think maybe the 3rd grade, I'm not sure.
Okay. And did she also have another job during the time that you met her?
Yes, she was the hostess for the Black Angus.
And did you maintain a friendship with Betty after that period of time?
Yes, all through the 70s.
Okay. And what kind of activities did you do together?
Well, we both had young children. It was like, going to the beach. We had households that, didn't have a lot of money, so we go thrift shops and shop, for the kids' clothes and stuff like that. And she was active in all, different sports and stuff.
Okay. And were those with the children?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Okay. Was she someone who was spending a lot of money?
No, she didn't have a lot of money to spend. Neither one of us did.
Okay. And were you aware of any medical problems that she had at that time?
Yes, as I said, she had 2 daughters, and I had 2 daughters about the same age. And she kept getting, pregnant, and she had varicose veins that were really bad. And she kept having like miscarriages and even carried a baby to term, and it died.
Okay. Did you and your family socialize with the Brodericks?
Yes.
Did during the time that you were there, was Mr. Broderick involved with the children?
No, at that point in his life, his ambition was he wanted to.
Objection, Your Honor, calls for hearsay or speculation.
I'm sustained.
Okay. Was he involved with his children? Just
No.
okay. Did you know them at the when they moved to Coral Reef?
Yes.
Okay, and what was when the years they first moved in there? How was Coral Reef furnished?
Really nothing, because before they'd moved, they'd had a fire, and they didn't have much of anything. It was just things people gave him, just odds and ends.
During the time that you knew her, what was her attitude towards Dan?
I really didn't think they had, basic arguments like everybody, but they seemed to get along, real well. I never heard arguments. I never heard cuss words or anything like that.
Would you say that she was someone who seemed to be always critical of her husband?
No.
Did you ever see an injury to Mrs. Broderick?
Yes.
And what did you see?
She had a black eye.
Did she ever tell you how this occurred?
No, I asked her, but she didn't really, she just said it was an accident, and it's embarrassing enough anyway, so I just didn't cry.
Okay. Did she seem like she wanted to talk about it?
No.
And do you remember what year this happened?
About 76.
I have no further questions.
Cross down.
You indicated that the defendant would throw lavish parties. What is it that you're talking about? Are you talking about during this period of time?
No, I only indicate if, I'm not sure, I said that last time.
Well, if I can show you a report. Page 2.
Oh, this was an Easter party, the one time when he finally went out on his own. See,
Do you recall when this was that she threw, you've described that she threw lavish parties, correct?
well, I didn't mean parties. I was just talking about this one particular. They'd finally gotten some money and she threw a big Easter party.
Okay.
And it was mainly for the children.
And when you're talking about the time that you knew her, the period of time you're talking about was in the early 70s, right? We're talking about 20 years ago.
Early 70s to the late 70s when he started making some money.
Okay. And during that period of time, when you said you had a friendship with her, how many times, for example, would you be over at the house during the week where Dan would be home?
During the week?
Mhm.
Well, I'm thinking of when I was babysitting and she was working. You mean after that period of time?
Well, at any period of time, how many times would you be there? Dan obviously worked full-time. He worked during the day,
Right.
correct? And so when would be the times that you would see him?
Would be like if we went over for dinner sometimes or on weekends, more likely.
Okay. So you wouldn't be there in the evenings when he would come home from work, for example, to see how he interacted with the children?
No, I was there in the evening several times.
Okay. When Dan would come home from work?
Right.
Okay. When was it that they moved to Coral? Were you there did you know her when she moved to Coral?
Yes, I was trying to think. I'm not sure because it wasn't too long after they first moved out here because they lived in Claremont Mesa and they were renting that house and then that burned down. And then they purchased the Coral Reef home. When they purchased it, it didn't have anything. It was just like a brand new home.
Okay.
No fences, nothing.
Now, the injury to the black eye, when you saw that, when was that? What year is that?
About around 76.
Okay, and how is it that you remember it was in 76?
Well, I know it wasn't when I first met her, and it wasn't later on. I think it was when Dan was still working for the law firm, and he worked for 2 years there when he first moved out.
And when you saw it, did you ask her what happened?
Yes, I did.
And what was her specific response?
She just said she really didn't want to talk about it. It was an accident.
Okay. Did you ever talk about it at all with her later after that?
No, Betty was not. She kept her feelings to herself. I mean, she didn't really like to talk about something. It was just an impression I had.
And you indicated that during the times that you saw them together, you never heard them arguing, you never heard any disagreements.
Not really. Sometimes when, like, we were there for dinner, and he was 2 hours late, and he had been out having some drinks and discussing business, according to him. She was a little upset, but no, there was no, we had dinner and everything went fine. I mean, sure, there was no yelling or screaming or anything like that.
I have nothing further.
Correct.
No, you're.
Witness be excused. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Shake this time.
Yeah.
Follow that moment for sure.
You do solemnly swear the testimony about to give in the matter of any for this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Good morning, ma'am. How are you?
Ma'am, could you please state your full name for the record and spell your last name?
Melanie Coors, Cohrs.
Do you know the lady here at the end of the council table, Betty Broderick?
Yes, I do.
And do you know approximately when you met her?
Yes, it was in either 78 or 79.
What is your occupation?
I'm an interior designer.
Is there such thing as a interior decorators or designer license?
No,
Okay.
not in the state of California.
How did you happen to meet her?
I owned a store in La Jolla at that particular time, and she used to come and shop there.
Okay. And when you first met her, how would you describe her?
I would describe her as a fun, happy person, but most of the time when she'd come in, she'd be in a hurry because she was concerned about her children and she had to go here or pick them up or do this or be home for the children.
Was she someone that was wearing fancy clothes?
No, I either saw her in jeans or jogging suits or sweatshirt suits or clothing like that.
Did you meet Dan Broderick?
Yes, I did.
Okay. At some point in time, did you become a closer friend of Betty?
Yes, as things progressed and they had purchased or were thinking of purchasing Coral Reef, she had asked me to help with the house and some architectural things. And then when I saw, and then at that time, I came to know that she was separating from Dan, and she and I became quite close
Okay.
from that point for several years after that.
What year would have that been?
That would have been 85.
And when you said Coral Reef, did you mean Coral Reef or Calle
I
de
mean,
Cielo?
Coral, I'm sorry, Calle de Cielo.
Okay. And did you see any changes in Betty at the time after their separation?
Objection, Your Honor, this is getting
Ma'am, over, would you answer that?
Yes, she was very upset. She would go into periods of depression. I noticed a withdrawing from a lot of people. I felt that my job was to try and cheer her up a lot of the times because when I would go over there, she would be in a very depressed state.
And would you visit her at her home in La Jolla?
Yes.
Okay. And how often would you say you saw her during the week or month after her separation?
Sometimes it was 2 or 3 times a week. Sometimes I wouldn't see her for a month.
Okay.
I'd see her once a month.
Can you, now, you indicated that you got more involved with her at the time that the time they purchased Calle de Cielo. Was there a reason for that?
Well, at first it was because the house was in such bad shape. And I was called in on a conference with an architect and Betty to see what we could do to change the house interiorly.
Okay. Can you describe the condition of the home when she first moved into it?
Well, apparently there'd been a large family living there and they had taken and put up like partitions in some of the rooms and they were divided and almost like I don't know, where you see the tenement housing where they've taken one room and they've compartmentalized it and There were separate bedrooms, or one room that she later became to use the family room, I think was made into 3 bedrooms. The garage also had a couple of bedrooms in it.
Was there any furniture in the house the first 3 or 4 months that you can remember?
No,
Do you know where she was sleeping?
on the floor.
Do you know how long it took her to furnish the house?
She hadn't completely furnished it by the time she was moving out. Little by little, I know that it was empty, fairly empty for quite a while, and then little by little, old pieces of furniture from her other house would appear. And also one day she got tired of not having any furniture in the living room, so she went out and bought everything.
Okay. Was it expensive furniture that she was buying?
Not very much, no.
Did she make any improvements to the house?
Yes, a lot of landscaping and added on a room in the back.
Do you know what the purpose of those improvements were?
Well, for several reasons. The house itself wasn't very interesting. Her dream house had been more of a colonial style, and this house wasn't that way. So the white picket fence in the front was added for that reason, and the landscaping was pretty bad. So she had done a lot with that. And then the backyard, which was totally devoted to children's activities, and the cabana or pool house that was built in the back was definitely made for parties. It was a dream for children to have a party.
Okay. Did you feel that she was someone who was a talented person, or someone who was could have been an interior decorator?
I think Betty had good taste. I think she needed help to get things together properly. The house was nice, but it wasn't as nice as it could have been. And I'm not saying that she had to spend any more money either.
But there was never any time where did you talk to her about going into partnerships as an interior decorator, or feel that?
At one time, there's a organization or a what do you call them, franchise called Decorating Den. And she had read an article, I think in the New York Times or somewhere, because that was her favorite newspaper, I know, or the Wall Street Journal. And it was just starting up at that time. And she said, hey, why don't I buy a van and we can go around and do this? And I said, well, she was going to meet with this person that was starting this up. And I said, well, the designing and decorating business is a little more complicated than you really think it is. And we talked about it a little bit, but I was definitely telling her that it's not exactly an easy thing to do, and I really didn't think she should do it, especially since I think the beginning startup costs.
All right, sustained.
Were you ever in the home when you heard messages left for her from the children?
Yes,
Okay. And do you know about over what period of time did you hear these messages?
a couple years.
Okay. And can you describe those messages?
Well, there's one in particular that I can't get out of my head, and that is one that I heard Rhett on the phone crying and calling for his mother and asking for help and saying that he was going to hurt me. And then all of a sudden there was a click and the phone went dead. And it upset me a lot. And that was,
Non-responsive.
Sustained.
Can you describe Betty's reactions?
well, Betty went nuts. Betty went berserk and immediately went to the phone and tried to call them back. And of course, she got an answering machine.
Did were you around the house when she would have to take the boys back to their fathers after visits?
Yes.
Okay. And what was the children's reaction?
They weren't very happy. Again, there was one particular time that, again, I can't get out of my head, that Rhett was clinging to her and crying and saying, "Mommy, please don't send me back. I don't want to go back there. I hate it. It's awful. Please don't send me back. And she started to cry herself and said, I have to. If I don't, they'll put me in jail again.
Did you hear her use profanity about Dan or Linda in front of the boys?
Yes.
Okay. How often would this occur?
Well, I don't think it was a primary thing. Occasionally, most of the time she was having fun with the children and playing with the children. But occasionally the cloud would come over the group, and that's whenever Dan or Linda were brought up, that the profanity would come out.
Okay. Did you try to get Betty to make plans socially?
Yes, all the time.
And were there problems with that?
Yes, it became increasingly more difficult.
Did it have anything to do with the children?
Yes. It was a very sporadic thing because I'd call and I'd say, okay, let's go to a movie or let's go out to dinner. And she'd say, I can't, the kids are coming this weekend. And I'd say, great. And she'd be all happy. And then a couple of days later, she'd call and she'd say, they didn't come or they weren't able to come. And then, so the next week I said, well, it's all right. Let's do this. Or there would be some kind of a thing where you might even have to pay. There were several particular social events that weren't the expensive ones, and it didn't matter if you didn't come with an escort, that she would buy tickets for. And then at the last minute, the children would come. And this happened on a couple of occasions that she would just lose her money on the ticket and she couldn't go. She'd stay home with the children.
Did you ever see her reaction to getting legal papers in the mail?
Oh, yes.
Okay, and what kind of reactions would you see?
It was always not again, except for one particular time when we'd been out to a movie or out to dinner or something. And during dinner, she got very upset. And I kept saying, well, what's wrong? And she said, I got some papers today. And she said, they're going to send me back to jail. And I said, are you sure? And she said, yes, I think they were delivered by a marshal and they're going to send me back to jail. And I said, well, don't worry about it. We'll just go to your house and pick up something for you to wear, and you can come to my apartment because they won't find you there and we can figure it out and maybe do something about it and talk to your lawyer or call a lawyer. And so we went to her house and I said, you better let me read it. So I started to read it. Well, it had a little bit to do with it, but it didn't have anything to do with her going to jail. And I got very frightened at that time because I had always thought that Betty understood all these legal papers, and I could see that it was evident from this that she really didn't too much.
Yeah.
And this even scared me more later when I knew she was representing herself.
During the years that you knew her, did you see any change in her physical appearance?
Oh, yes. When I first met her, she was lovely, beautiful, happy person with a darling sense of humor. She was just lots of fun to be around. And little by little, I saw that person dissolve and gain weight and eat compulsively.
Did you see Betty during the summer of 1989?
Yes.
Okay. Were you aware of anything she was doing to help her try to get custody of the boys?
Yes. The couple of times that I saw her during that summer, she was happy about one thing, that part of it was over and she could concentrate on getting the children back and try and move forward. But the papers kept coming that I think were partly negative for her.
So during the summer, while she was working to get the boys back, her mood, at least it improved. for
It
that reason.
improved for a short period of time, yes, it did.
I have no further questions.
Cross-examine.
When you say the papers kept coming in the summer of 1989, did you see any of these papers that were delivered in the summer of 1989?
It would be hard to say that there were always so many papers there, and so I can't tell you what dates or whenever they came.
Well,
I just knew that things were happening and more.
Well, let's just talk about the summer of 1989. Are you aware of her receiving any papers regarding
can't.
custody of the children in the summer of 1989?
I think Betty told me that she had received some. I can't give you an exact time, or I can't say that I actually physically saw a paper arrive, no.
Okay. And were you aware that she didn't file for custody of the boys until late September of 1989?
No,
Were you aware that there were no actions going on in court with respect to custody of the boys during the summer?
no.
And when you indicate that there was this one time when she was very upset about receiving some papers and said, they're gonna take me back to jail again. And you went back to her house and you sat down and you read the papers, and it was clear to you that they weren't taking her back to jail, and nobody was gonna take her back to jail, correct?
Right.
That was not the tenor or the content of the papers that she had received.
Right.
Okay. And did you sit down and go over it with her and read
Yes.
together with her?
Yes, and at that time, then she had me read quite a few of the other papers from the divorce.
Okay. But with respect to those papers, it was clear that nobody was sending her to jail, and she, from reading those, could obviously understand that, correct?
No, not necessarily, because she had been to jail,
Okay, but
and she didn't understand at that time. So why should she understand when those came?
well, when papers came that had to do with something that was entirely unrelated,
Oh, no, it wasn't. Well,
What-
it wasn't unrelated to the problem and the reason that she was sent to jail. It was to do with the profanity in the tapes that Dan had.
And was there anything in there that said that she was going to jail?
Not at that particular time, no.
When you read the papers, it was clear to you that she
Yes.
was not going to jail?
Yes.
Okay. You've always described Elizabeth Broderick as being extremely intelligent, correct?
Yes,
Very, very bright,
yes. But you can be intelligent and naive at the same time,
okay?
and I think that's Betty.
With respect to the decorating of the house, it is true that she received most of the furniture from the Coral Reef house by the time Dan and the kids had moved into Cyprus, correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and that was in December of 1985.
If that's when it was, yeah.
And then after that period of time, there was, with respect to the house, it was repainted, it was recarpeted, there was new kitchen cabinets put in, new kitchen counters, new linoleum, new canvas overhangings on the outside of the house, new fences, new lights, the pool house in the back, all of that was done post 1985, correct?
Yes, can I clarify a couple of those things?
Yeah.
Like when you say new cabinets in the kitchen, I believe it was just new faces. It's a difference, and
Were you involved in doing that with
No.
her, or she was doing that herself?
she was doing that herself.
So she was making those decisions about how to do those?
Yes, occasionally she would ask my advice. I didn't want to sell her anything. I knew that she had a problem with her cash flow. So, and we also were friends at this time, and I didn't want to be on that kind of a relationship with her.
In fact, didn't you try to talk her into not spending quite so much money?
Yes. I wanted her to wait.
And the phone message that you indicated that you heard from Rhett, that was several years ago, several years before November 5th of 1989, right?
Yes,
Okay. So it had been sometime maybe in 1986?
it's possible.
And there was a phone call from Rhett, and then you indicated that it hung up and she was very upset and she called back. What did she do when she called back?
She, as I said, she went nuts. And at that time, that's when she started screaming into the phone, "Where are my children?" and said the profanity, some profanities, yes.
Do you recall what she said to the phone?
No.
Okay, well, obviously her concern at that point was about Rhett
Yes,
and where are my children?
right,
Okay, what else was she saying on the phone? Was she yelling profanities about Linda?
yes,
And,
because it was Linda answering the machine,
and how do you know that?
because she told me,
Okay.
because
What did she
she
do after
said,
that?
you know, you're on the machine.
Okay. What did she do after that? I mean, there was an answer and she yelled profanities into the phone, and then what happened?
She said, I've got to wait, I can't leave. I think we were gonna go out, or we were gonna do something again, we'd come home, and I don't remember exactly what happened, but I remember how upset she was, and she said, now I have to be by the phone, I
What did-
can't leave.
Okay, but did she do it, if she was concerned about the welfare of Rhett, did she ask you to go over to the house and see how he was? Or did she call another friend to check? Or did she call the police or anything like that?
No,
And the incident that you referred to about Rhett saying that he didn't want to go back when she was going to send him back to his father's, when was that? In relation to November 5th of 1989.
I'm not sure. It's hard for me to, the years sort of run together.
That was several years
Probably
before, too.
88.
Okay. And, I mean, obviously Rhett loved his mom. I mean, I think that's correct.
Yes, that is
Fair to
correct.
say. And he wanted to visit his mother more than he was being allowed to, correct?
That's correct.
And you were not aware of the situations with respect to the recommendations of the psychologist and why they were recommending that there not be more visitation, correct?
On one occasion I was.
Okay, from what Elizabeth Broderick told you? Or did you talk to the psychologist?
No, from what Elizabeth Broderick told me.
Okay, so you were aware, at least from Elizabeth Broderick, that the psychologists that were dealing with the children were recommending that there be limited visitation with the defendant, correct?
Not that far. There was just one time when I was there where there was a phone call from a psychologist.
Okay,
And I know that Betty came back and said, well, I won't do what the psychologist wants me to do. I cannot live with somebody telling me what to do all the time like this. So she's telling me now I can't have the children this weekend.
okay. So a psychologist had apparently called her and talked to her and made suggestions or recommendations about what she should do in order to have the children, but she was indicating to you that she wasn't gonna do that. Nobody was gonna tell her what to do.
She'd been told too much what to do.
Obviously, when Rhett was going back to his dad's, you indicated that she said, if I don't, I've got to send you back. If I don't, I'll be put in jail, right?
That's correct.
Now, obviously, if Rhett's upset, he's a little boy. He loves both his parents. He wants to spend time with both his parents. When she's telling him, I've got to send you back, there's a couple of ways of dealing with that if he's upset, right? There's one way of saying, Rhett, don't worry about it. Your dad loves you and you're happy over at his house. And
Your Honor, are we gonna have, I object, Your Honor.
Sustain, just rephrase your question.
okay. Well, did she say anything about Rhett, honey, don't worry about it, calm down. You know your dad loves you. You're going to spend some time with your dad. You're going to see me next weekend. Don't worry about it. Calm down and let's go back to dad and I'll see you later.
Your Honor, objection assumes facts, not evidence.
I'm asking-
Part of a question, you answer.
Did she say that at this particular time?
I'm sure she said, I know that she said, calm down, don't worry about it, but I'm sure that she never would have said, your father loves you.
Were you aware of the fact that she was telling him constantly that his father did not love him?
No, never, I didn't hear her say that, no.
Were you ever aware of the fact that she was telling him your father?
Your Honor, objection, she's gotten the answer.
Sustain.
I was going to ask another question.
Your Honor, obviously, when she said she's never heard it, this is in bad faith.
The first question was fine. Ask another question.
You indicated that you'd heard her use some profanity with respect to Dan and Linda in front of the children.
Correct.
Did you ever hear her say things like your father treats you like a piece of shit?
No, I don't remember that.
Your Honor, there's been objections to me asking these kind of questions, and I
Sustained.
object to her asking.
Sustained.
When you heard her using profanities about Dan and Linda, did you ever hear her telling the boys how Dan and Linda felt about them or what their situation was like over at their house?
No,
Okay, did you ever hear her describe their house in derogatory terms?
no,
And you were aware that the defendant was never put in jail for not sending her child back to Dan at the end of the visitation, correct?
that's correct.
And in fact, there were times when she did that, when she did not send him back at the end of a visitation, and she was not put in jail. There were no contempts filed against her.
I don't know that, other than the fact that she didn't go to jail again.
Were you ever aware when she was talking to the boys and using profanities, did you ever hear her telling the boys to do things to Dan or Linda?
No,
Were you ever aware of that circumstance?
no,
Were you ever aware of any circumstances when she had the boys and she had visitation of the boys, but she got angry for one reason or another and took them back to Dan's house when they didn't
No.
want to go?
no,
Were you around in 1985 at any time when the boys would want to be with her, stay with her house, and she would refuse to let them do that?
no,
You indicated that you did try to talk to her about the language that she was using and that it was not being helpful to her situation, correct?
I told her that it was only self-defeating, that she was only hurting herself by using this language.
And she wouldn't listen to that.
She said, and at that point, and I think she was probably right, that that was the only thing, that was the only outlet she had.
But you were explaining to her that by using that outlet, that it was obviously self-defeating. The psychologists were telling her it was self-defeating, and she still continued to do it, correct?
She used profanity, I will say, it almost became second nature. It was hard for her to, it was as an adjective. It was almost part of Deb Broderick's name. I mean,
When
it
you-
wasn't that you couldn't say his name without that word.
Okay. And you talked to her about the fact that maybe that was not appropriate around the children, for example. Were you
I
ever
did.
aware of situations, for example, when she was in court? And she obviously was dealing with Dan Broderick and wasn't using that name. She could control it when she needed to.
I wasn't in court, so I don't know.
Were you ever at Frances Parker,
No.
around other people, where she was around other people and didn't
Oh,
use?
yes. Oh, yes. She didn't have to all the time, but when she was with her friends,
Isn't it true that there were times when she did not use the bad language, and there were times when
oh,
she did?
sure. Oh, yes.
So
Oh,
she
very
had
definitely.
control
It
over when
wasn't,
she was doing it.
not always. No, she had her public persona, but when she let her hair down and when she was with her friends, I mean, just like all of us, I mean, you control different things, but you let your emotions, when you let your emotions go, then it comes out, sure.
You indicated that she was a very black and white person. She only saw things as either black or white.
It's good and evil, yes.
No in-betweens. Couldn't see the in-betweens.
Right, on certain things, yes.
And you also indicated that she was angry at Dan and wanted to get back at him, but she couldn't seem to find any way of doing it. Did you make that statement?
I think that she was having a hard time through the legal system. That's what I think I meant. It seemed that she felt that the legal system was against her.
And did you not say that she was angry at Dan and wanted to get back at him, but she couldn't seem to find any way of doing it?
I might have said that.
You could just take a look at an investigative report, page 4, just the underlying section here. With the conditions that you were talking. Did you make that statement?
Yes, I did, and I said that she was frustrated.
And when was the last time that you had contact with her? You indicated that you had contact with her over the summer of 1989, correct?
It became more and more difficult. Betty,
Excuse me, I'm sorry, if you could just tell me, when was the last time that you had contact with her?
well, it depends on what you mean by contact. I saw
When was the
her,
last time you
I
saw
saw
or
her
talked to her?
about a week or 2 weeks before November 5th.
Okay. You indicated that with respect to the problems of making plans or whatever for the weekends, there were no such problems during the summer of 1989 or during September or October of 1989, correct? In that regard?
No, I don't believe so, no. It was
Those were things
more,
that had happened years
it was
before.
more that Betty was going into herself. I think she was in more of a depressive state and hiding from people.
Do you know, I mean, she was involved in decorating her condominium at that time. She bought a condominium, right? And she had
Yes.
hired another interior
Yes.
decorator to do that. So
That's
you
correct.
weren't, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump on your answer. You weren't involved at all in the decoration of the condo or what she was doing with the house during that period of time?
No.
And did you ever see Rhett or Danny when they were with their father and not with Elizabeth Broderick?
No.
I have no further questions.
Redirect.
Just very briefly, when you were, were you ever present when she called a hotline?
No.
And did, at the time that you mentioned the incident with the psychologist or psychiatrist, was that incident that they wanted her to think nice things about Dan or talk nice about him?
Yes.
I have no further questions.
Recross?
Well, when you're talking about talk nice things, you mean just not use the profanities around the children or talking sexually explicit terms, correct?
Well, I don't know. I didn't hear the exact conversation. I just know that she talked to the psychologist said, you can't see the children this weekend.
Nothing further.
Mr. Early?
No, you're
Witness be excused?
Yes.
Thank you very much, ma'am.
Your Honor, I do, I might have a short witness, as the court knows, but other than that, Your Honor, and some stipulations I think we'll reach, that is, I will rest that.
Well,
I
You
don't
don't
have
have-
witnesses today.
okay, you don't have to rest at this point. I've already explained to the jury the witness situation. Just want to make sure that's it for
That's it
today. All right. Well, for a change, I guessed the wrong way. I thought we might go into the lunch hour, and obviously we're not going to make it to the lunch hour. We'll take our recess at this time, ladies and gentlemen. As I told you yesterday, the attorneys and I will be doing some other evidentiary matters the rest of the day today. They have appearances not involving this case tomorrow, so we won't be in session at all tomorrow. On Monday, the attorneys and I will be doing further evidentiary matters that have to be done outside your presence. So we will resume with the testimony on Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. Please remember the admonition not to discuss the case among yourselves, nor allow anyone else to discuss it with you, nor form any opinions till it's finally submitted to you. And please continue the excellent job you've been doing so far of not watching, listening, or reading anything about this case. As you know, we're getting very close to the end, and I would certainly hate to lose any of you at this stage of the game. Have a nice weekend. Mrs. Broderick is present. Members of the public are present. We're here to go over the previously marked exhibits, both the people's and defense exhibits. The record should further reflect that all counsel have met with regard to the exhibits, and I understand have reached agreement on some, have reached disagreement on some, and are uncertain as of now as to their position on the remaining. I would propose that we start by going over those exhibits that everyone's in agreement on. Then we'll go over those that people where you agree that you disagree. And then with the third category, if it's agreeable with you, with both parties, I'll give you additional time to see determine what your positions are before we do those. Is that all right, Ms. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Early?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's start with the people's exhibits that are agreed upon.
Your Honor,
I have a list of them if you, well, go ahead, any way you want to do it.
I was just gonna suggest maybe everything that's on this table is what we've agreed upon. If I just list them off and then you can cross them off your list.
All right.
Do that. They're not necessarily in order though.
Well, that's all right, I can do that. If that agreeable with you, Mr. Early?
What's that again, Your Honor?
She said that everything that you, both counsel have agreed on, whether the defense exhibits or people's exhibits are on this table. And she
Yes.
purports to just read off the number, and upon her reading off the number, they'll be received in evidence without objection by you as to people's exhibits and without objection by her as to defendant's exhibits. Is that agreeable?
Yes, Your Honor.
That's agreeable with the people.
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
Do you, you have yours, your peoples and defendants separated?
Yes, I do.
Okay, 'cause,
Yes, I do.
okay, so I'll just start off. People's Exhibit 12.
All right.
People's Exhibit 26A.
All right,
People's Exhibit 26B.
all right,
20. People's Exhibit 20.
all right,
People's Exhibit 47.
all right,
People's 26.
all right,
People's 23.
all right,
People's 17.
all right.
Right. You know, Your Honor, that was brought in, and I don't know if we ever entered it. And if we haven't, the spread, what we'll do is we'll stipulate that that's the spread from the set.
They stapled to the spread, I think.
Well, what I can do if you want, people's 17 was the mattress pad, and if you want, I can mark the spread that was over the 17A or something like that.
That's fine.
And both sides stipulate to foundation and authenticity, and I can receive it in evidence?
Yes.
All right, 17A is the bed spread received.
Would that be marked and received date?
Yeah, marked and received by stipulation, both parties today.
Okay.
Go ahead.
People's 14. People's 16.
All right,
13.
all right,
15.
all right.
Defense J.
I have no objection to you reading off his exhibits as long as he doesn't. Is that all
Yeah,
right,
that's
Mr. Early?
fine.
All right, well, that's fine. Please receive.
I don't,
Well,
would you like to read yours off?
no, that's, I just want to make,
Defense L.
all right,
Defense I.
all right,
Defense H.
all right.
Defense K.
Give this one back.
No, we have not decided on. People's 11.
All right,
People's 19.
all right,
People's 18.
all right,
Okay, defense triple J.
all right,
Defense double J.
all right,
Defense triple M.
all right,
Defense double D. Is that D is double B is in dog?
all right,
Defense double I.
all right,
Defense triple B is in dog.
all right,
Defense triple E.
all right,
Defense triple H.
all right,
Defense M.
all right,
Defense triple G.
all right,
Defense triple B.
all right,
People's 24.
I believe that was previously received. It was.
Oh, was that part of, it was? Oh, it was previously received in the computer, okay. Defense triple C,
All right.
defense F,
But F is in thing.
Yes.
All right.
defense double P. Yeah.
All right.
Defense double,
Tell me what it is. I can tell
defense
you.
double G
That's a letter
from
from
Don Edson.
Mr. Edson. All right, that's G, double G to C.
Defense double F,
All right,
defense double E,
all right,
defense triple F,
all right,
defense U,
all right,
defense O,
all right,
defense D,
all right,
defense double Y,
all right,
Peoples 34,
all right,
Peoples 27,
all right,
Peoples 66,
all right,
Peoples 87,
all right,
Peoples 99,
all right,
Peoples 46,
all right,
Peoples 28,
all right,
Peoples 98,
all right,
Peoples 75,
all right,
Peoples 36,
all right,
Peoples 37,
all right.
Peoples 59,
That was previously received.
Peoples 44,
All right.
Peoples 83,
Second pen just ran out of. Okay, 44, then 83.
44, and then 83.
All right. Got both those.
Peoples 29,
All right.
Peoples 81,
All right.
Peoples 73,
All right.
Peoples 69,
All right.
Peoples 39,
All right.
Peoples 25,
All right.
Peoples 45,
That was previously received.
Peoples 111,
All right.
Peoples 65,
All right.
Peoples 80,
All right.
Peoples 56,
All right.
Peoples 72,
All right.
Peoples 68,
All right.
Peoples 30,
All right.
Peoples 33.
All right.
Okay. Those are the ones with the
Yeah. Okay.
sort of
How about more?
She found those cards.
What? Yeah, it belongs with it in was, yeah, this belongs with the Japanese extra stuff, that's why I had it put on. Here.
Can't have that. Yeah, is this the one that we had talked about?
Yeah.
I thought so, but maybe not. Maybe I thought he must have put that later. Maybe not.
Yeah, okay, that's that, okay. What, do you want to omit this in here? Yeah, I'm gonna ask. I want to. What? We have another case where you can use that thing.
You want to keep going with photos or?
We'll photos.
All right. You want you both stipulated the admission, right?
Right,
All right, go ahead.
we got, Peoples 3.
All right.
Peoples 43.
All right.
Peoples 61.
All right.
Peoples 53.
All right.
Peoples 67.
All right.
Peoples 54.
All right.
Peoples 22.
All right.
Peoples 8.
All right.
Peoples 2.
All right.
Peoples 38.
All right.
Peoples 6.
All right.
Peoples 21.
All right.
So we didn't mark, I don't know what we do with the. I don't think it was ever. Peoples 62.
All right.
Peoples 9.
All right.
Peoples 7.
All right.
Peoples 1.
All right.
Peoples 5.
All right.
Peoples 31.
All right.
Peoples 10.
All right.
And Peoples 64, and I believe we have a stipulation as regards 64 that it accurately, fairly depicts the condition of the bedroom, including the condition of the windows and shades attached thereto at the time that Detective DeGelder, now Sergeant DeGelder, came into the bedroom that morning on November 5th.
So stipulate, Mr. Irwin?
Yes, sir.
All right, so that's stipulation. You may want to renew that stipulation in front of the jury.
Yes.
All right.
Your Honor, and we have double H in all the numbers, but I think that Wells wants to check the entries on it.
That's correct.
All right, how about these over here, these other display boards you have over here? I assume there's no objection, but let me know if there is.
No, you're wrong.
We've got a few more photographs over here as well.
I'm just gonna move these back over here so they're
Sure, it's fine. Okay.
Jack, we got some more. We've got Peoples 32,
All right.
Peoples 4,
All right.
very nice. Defense, no, that's yours. The Peoples 85C,
All right.
85A,
All right.
85B,
All right.
equals 63.
All right.
I don't think this one was marked. This is the letter.
We didn't have that marked,
Okay.
or you didn't have that marked, I should say.
All right. I believe you're on.
I think we've agreed somewhat to the tapes as well.
Well, before I wrap it up, go ahead. Let's do the tapes.
Well, Your Honor, obviously the problems with the tapes is, they've listened to, the jury's listened to the tapes. I have another tape that hasn't been played yet for the jury. And so I think my argument is attached to those tapes, as well as the marriage encounters. I mean, I think that they're all in the same type of,
So the marriage contract book of Mr.
my
Broderick.
belief is that I know what the court's gonna do, but I think that they should all be talked about at once.
That's fine. Well, Mr. Broderick's marriage contract book's already been received, as I recall. Is that not true?
Yes.
All right, go ahead.
Um,
Well, before you start, are you saying that you don't have an agreement on the tapes?
I thought that the only disagreement was with respect to the one that defense counsel had marked as triple P, but I could be wrong. The others, I believe, have already been played for the jury.
Well, mine wasn't played in front of the jury, but the problem is the court just wanted to wait so she'd have an opportunity to listen to it. Obviously, I'm in a position of, that was the tape that was seized by the police at,
Those were the three messages that were contained in the DeFaro letter, if I'm not mistaken.
it's just a copy of the tape answering machine that was seized from Mr. Broderick's home.
I have no problem with admitting that.
Well, Your
I'll
Honor,
listen to you as well.
well, I don't have, there are more than just the messages that are listed in the Kafaro letter. If we're just going to be introducing the tapes, the copies of the tapes that are transcribed in that letter, I don't have objection to that, but there are other messages and there are, actually, I haven't heard the tape yet, but I believe that there's the voice of Linda on it after putting the tape on, which I think is irrelevant. So if we're just talking about
Well, we're
the
just
jury
talking,
actually hearing the messages that are transcribed in that letter, I don't object to that. The rest of it, I think, is irrelevant.
I don't know what else is on there, but as to those three, I think they are relevant. Mr. Early, did you want to put anything other than those three in? Or
All I wanted to do is put whatever messages are,
three messages in that letter?
I don't know if whatever messages are left on that tape by Elizabeth Broderick.
I have no idea, Mr. Early. I haven't heard it, but if I understood what you were offering or what you want in front of the jury is the actual message, those three messages that are referred to in the DeFaro letter that your client received immediately prior to the.
Well, I'll have to listen to it again. I know this is the tape that contains those messages. So anything that has to do with Elizabeth Broderick's voice on that tape, I will.
Why don't we?
Why
don't we do it this way? Why don't we'll not deal with that tape right now. I will tell you both that those messages, if offered by the defense, will be admissible. Then maybe what you should do is take a clean tape and put those messages on a separate tape so that we don't have whatever else may be on there going to the jury.
I'm sure that I can have technical department do
But
that.
let's listen to the tape first and see if there's something else he wants other than those three messages. Or I guess we could add anything else at the end if you want to.
But I know that.
That's what I am objecting to.
What I'm saying is that's a tape that sees from Broderick home. It contains messages from Elizabeth Broderick.
All right.
I want just the messages from Elizabeth Broderick. from that tape.
I object, Your Honor, that because there's more messages than just the messages that are referred to in that letter. If we're going to introduce all of the tapes that were seized from the Broderick home with her messages, we've got a ton of those.
Well, but the problem is this is an original tape of the messages.
No, it's not. It's the same as, it's the same as any other where the messages were taken
No, but
and
I think-
copies made.
Well, it's hard for me to rule in a vacuum. Why don't we do it this way? Make a tape of the messages, the 3 messages that are referred to in the Cafaro letter. Those are clearly admissible. We can discuss later anything else on that tape as to whether or not it's admissible. But for sure, if Ms. Burley wants those 3 in,
Well,
they are relevant, they're admissible.
I know that all the messages on that tape from Elizabeth Broderick, I haven't sat down with the letter, are all referring to the same time.
Well, we don't have any foundation on that.
Well, so all we gotta do is listen to them. I know that they all refer to the same thing about Rhett calling last night, not being home. They're all the same messages about the same time.
So I'm in the dark, because
Okay,
I don't know. If you 2 can't work that out, and you want me to listen to the tape and decide.
I think it's 30 seconds.
The whole thing is 30 seconds.
Oh, maybe however long, 30, 40 seconds.
Well, why don't you 2, or well, not you 2, but why not, in you 2 meeting the 2 deputy DAs, why don't you listen to that and see if you really have any objection?
Well, when we recess, we can just listen to it. All right, now.
All right, then with regard to the other tapes, I assume there's no objection to the other tapes at this point.
Well, I'd like to.
Or is there? All right, well,
I mean, I would like at least to have all the tapes handled at the same time.
all right, I can do that.
That's fine.
That's fine. All right, then for now, that is the ones we've just gone through that were both people's exhibits and defense exhibits. Those are all the ones that both parties have jointly agreed can be received without objection by the respective sides. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's correct. All right, then all those are respective exhibits are received in evidence. Now, there are some, I believe, where you have agreed that you disagree, I guess the best way to put it.
Correct.
You want to start with defense ones or people's? How do you want to do it?
Might as well start with mine.
We can start with some of the defense, I guess. I have the same objections that I had last time with the bulk of the photographs. There's Elizabeth Broderick. There's this series of them of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
Okay.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 photographs, and I believe that the photographs are cumulative, Your Honor.
Well, let's take a look at them one at a time. I'm sure I'll rule pretty close to the way I ruled last time. The ones in different time frames I think are clearly admissible, but we don't need several from the same time period.
Your Honor, if you'll just recall, at the beginning of this trial, there was an objection as to my use of the board and only putting on the board the photos that were admitted last time. Those are the photos that were admitted last time. Those were not, there was another 5 to 10 photos that I didn't even try to introduce because the court told me that don't even try.
Also, don't try because it was cumulative. Right?
Yes.
But it doesn't mean that these aren't cumulative as well.
Let's see if we can do them in some orderly fashion. A black and white photograph double in with 4 boys is received.
It's 4 children.
4 children, I'm sorry, I apologize.
There are other pictures of the 4 children. I'm just curious as to the relevance of having more than one picture of the 4 children come in at different ages. There's another picture in there of Elizabeth Broderick with her 4 children. Now,
Let's back off on double N for just a minute. Let me get all of the pictures with the children, try to handle all those at once. We have defense double A, which is Mrs. Broderick with Red and the rest of the soccer team. You object to that?
I mean, I object to it, yes.
All right, overruled, double K's received. We have a picture of the two boys with their dogs, that's double W. Objection to that?
Easy for you to say.
That's because it's my last name.
Yes, I object to the relevance of that.
All right, that's overruled. We've had testimony about kicking the dog and that kind of stuff. That's appears to be relevant. That's received.
Is double W?
Double W. All right, now we have two photographs, one showing the four children by themselves, which is double M. The other double X showing the defendant with the four children. I agree.
I would also
double M.
point out to the honor that it's People's 33, that is another photograph of the children.
You know, they're substantially older, would appear substantially older in that one than they are in these. And that was put in for a different reason. That's the one that has the X through it.
Yes.
That was, so I think either of these would be admissible. There's no need for them both. Do you have a preference, Mr. Early? Would you like the color photograph or the black and white photograph?
Well, Your Honor, there is a 4 to 5 year difference in years in those.
Well, the children aren't an issue in this case. The age of the children is not an issue. I can understand why, in your opinion, how your client may have changed appearance is an issue, but the kids growing up is not an issue.
The color one, obvious, Your Honor, is we would prefer to have.
All right, then we'll admit double X. Double M then is not received. Now we have a photograph, defendant's E, which is the photo of the house on Coral Reef. Is there an objection to that?
No,
All right, E. I assume you're offering E.
Yes, Your Honor.
E's received. We have a photograph of Mrs. Broderick and Brian Forbes, defendants A, that would appear to be relevant. Do you object to that?
Yes, what is the relevance?
Folks' testimony about those two being at the picnic together, et cetera. He identified that. Stand your own witness identified that.
Well, he may have identified it because it was shown to him by the defense and asked, is this a picture of you? But I don't see what's the relevance of them being at a picnic together at some point.
Remember off,
Photograph
just remember off the top of your head. Yeah, just watch, tell me, just go through my notes.
What, Your Honor?
Put the picture of Brian Forbes and your client, defendants A.
What was the purpose of it, Your Honor?
Relevance.
Your Honor, the relevance was that was one of the photos that showed at least the things that after separation, these were the things that there was some division of friends. And the other thing was, is, Your Honor, that, and I asked, and Elizabeth Broderick testified that was a summer vacation, and she had testified that Dan had not taken those vacations with her in the past.
All right, defendants A is received. Have a photograph of Mrs. Broderick during the time, I believe it was defendants double A, during the time that she was doing the child care. Is that correct? That's what that is?
No, I was working with some charity groups, Your Honor.
What's the relevance of that, Judge? Photograph of that.
Mr. Earl?
If we're talking about a change in, there's no issue as to whether or not she worked for some charities, if we're talking about a change in appearance.
Your Honor, it's not an issue of whether they object to it or not. You know, I'll just go through all the stuff I agreed to. We didn't object to any of this stuff, and we comes in as proof.
I didn't object.
So what I'm saying is that The only problem I'm having here, Your Honor, is that last time the court's position was, Mr. Early, you've got a lot of photos here, have one for each facet. And now you're saying, let's, you know.
I'm just, Mr. Early, for me to rule, I have to give both sides an opportunity to make their record. Don't be offended because I give you an opportunity to make your record.
Okay, I'm sorry. The record was, I was trying to show the facets of this woman's life, that she wasn't a mean, nasty, killing person. This was one facet of her life, and I cut down a number of others that were asked to do that.
This was your client with the Children's Home Society is what my
Yes.
notes show. All right, double A's received. Now we have three single photographs, or photographs showing only your client. They are obviously taken at different times because she obviously is of different ages. We'll start with Z, which is this one. It was obviously, I assume when they first moved out here, looks like she's considerably younger. I think that's appropriate. Do you have an objection to that, Ms. Wells?
Yes, Your Honor. To me, the issue, as I understood it, was a change in appearance from pre-separation to post-separation. And what she looked like when they first got married, to me, seems irrelevant.
All right, objections overruled, Z's received. We have double L, photograph taken of the defendant in July of 1985, which is right at the relevant time frame. I think that picture should be admitted. Do you have an objection?
Well, there's two other pictures of her in 1985. I believe that all three of them should not come in.
What are the others that were taken in 85, if you can help me?
That one that you're holding right there.
The portrait, that's double B.
And there's this one that's already been marked as 68.
Well, 68 and double B are pretty close to the same, Mr. Early, just a profile shot versus a facial shot. They're both color photographs of your client. Why don't you show him 68?
They look like they were taken at the exact same time.
That's what I say, they look like they're pretty. I don't see a need for both of them.
Can't see the I
Well,
just indicated
Yeah,
people.
withdraw. I think he wants to withdraw double B, and his client wants it back.
Yeah, I'll just,
Withdraw it without objection. Withdraw that without objection, Bill? All right. All right, that double B is withdrawn without objection, withdrawn by the defense without objection. All right, that double L will be received. And we have triple I, which is a photograph taken of the defendant in 1989. Any objection to that? Black and white photo, 8x10 black and white photo. Triple I is received. Have defendant's double C, which is a picture of Daniel Broderick and Mrs. Broderick prior to going to the Blackstone Ball, I believe in the late 70s, but I didn't write down the year. Objection?
Yes, I don't see the relevance.
Objection is overruled, double C is received. The last one we have is Mr. and Mrs., well, I should say Daniel Broderick and Mrs. Broderick, double B, on a bus trip that appears to be at some time other than the same age frame she was in the other pictures. I don't have a date as to when this was taken, but it would appear to be a different time frame, and it would appear to be admissible. Do you object to this one as well?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, objection is overruled, double B is received. All right, so all these photographs are received, with the exception of double M, and the one that was withdrawn by the defense without objection. All right, other
This one was withdrawn.
Well, did you want to withdraw that?
No, Your Honor, they didn't understand.
Oh, all right.
The difference between withdrawing and it's not it.
All right. Okay, are there another, you want to continue, there's another group of defense exhibits that you have agreed to disagree, or?
Defense triple Q,
That was a letter that has a received stamp of February 16th of 86. I don't remember the testimony regarding it off the top of my head. What was it?
Your Honor, this is a letter that shows that there was contempt hearings scheduled before the contempt hearings that were on the board.
Just shows they were scheduled, but nobody went to them? Is that
No,
the gist of it?
it just shows that there was, that there was a hearing and they were scheduled and that they were continued. I think that's a hearing where everyone attended.
it's a letter, Your Honor, to Judge Jones from Jerry Berry. It was copied to Tricia Smith, William Glucksman, and Daniel Broderick. It's hearsay.
Well, I thought we had already dealt with all the items in the divorce file that you wanted me to take judicial notice of anyway, so I really don't see the relevance of this. I thought we went through that pretty thoroughly.
Well, there was some that there was some questions about whether there was actually a contempt hearing or not. This was a letter that there was actually a contempt hearing on that day. And the only reason it was introduced is because Mrs. Broderick was asked on the stand about whether there were other contempt hearings that there were had. I showed her the letter. I mean, she identified that date on the letter.
Well,
I don't-
my next question is, should we handle this hearing any different than we handled the others, or should we just amend one of your boards to show another hearing? If there was another hearing, I should have taken judicial notice of. I mean, I think we had to handle them one way or the other. Either put in the documents or put them on the board, but I see no reason to be inconsistent.
Yeah, I don't see that this indicates another contempt hearing.
It says, I scheduled a contempt hearing in your court on the day of the reconsideration of February 22nd. That was put off to another day.
Right.
The question asked Mrs. Broderick, these were the only 4 contempt hearings she went to. That's a contempt hearing she went to, just didn't go forward, that's all. But I mean, it was just another contempt hearing.
Well, is that on your date there of the hearing for
No.
reconsideration?
Put on
I think maybe it was
contempt
just a
hearing.
matter of semantics. They didn't actually have a hearing.
Put on contempt hearing continued. Maybe that's the way to handle it. I think that's the way we handle the others.
What's the date of that? Is that the 9th? There is one on here. Is that the 9th?
Monday, February the 9th.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So it's already on there? All right. All right, then based on that, triple Q is not received. All right. What next?
Well, we have the marriage encounter of the defendant that I'm objecting to.
What number, what letter is that?
Why?
That's why.
This is a book that, even under the evidence from the defendant was not even discovered until after the last trial. There's no evidence that she read it or that it had anything to do with her state of mind prior to the murders. Again, it wasn't even discovered until after the fact. There has been some comment regarding it by the psychologist. I think that it's like any other matter that the psychologist can refer to for forming a basis of their opinion, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it independently comes in. Of course, I objected to the one for Daniel Broderick coming in as well.
Well, I left it in for different reasons. we don't need to go into those again, but that was the book that she referred to both last time and this time, that she consistently read to basically reconfirm her beliefs that she wasn't going crazy, etc. But Mr. Early, I tend to agree. I don't say.
Well, Your Honor, before, maybe I can tell you what the relevance
Sure.
is, Your Honor. There was a lot of cross-examination of Mrs. Broderick as far as her attitude towards Dan Broderick, the way she treated him during those years of the marriage. There were questions that were asked about that the marriage was never any good, that she was always problems with that Helen Picard had testified as to her being very critical of Dan and not loving him. And I think that when you look at the marriage encounter, what you end up finding is that you have a writing of her state of mind during that period of time that's not written in contemplation of a homicide trial. And it clearly I think it is clearly relevant for the jury to understand exactly what she was during that period of time. It was definitely put an issue as to her attitude towards Mrs. Broderick.
Let me take that one under submission. I understand both of your positions. I want to actually read what's in there.
And
I
I
don't know
think,
what's in there.
and I think if you read what's in there, Your Honor, there's nothing that it appears to be prejudicial. I mean,
I'll read what's in there. As to Mr. Broderick's, I don't need his as well. I don't need Mr. Broderick's, but I'll reserve ruling on why, because I want to check the contents. All right, we'll go on to another exhibit.
I object to defense AAA, which is a letter from Mr. Berry, from Tricia Smith to Mr. Berry.
All right, well, my notes,
And it was,
that's one of those I put a check mark by that really nobody laid a foundation for it.
that's correct.
It's a 3-page letter dated November 15th, 1988. My own notes indicate that at the time there was no foundation.
Your Honor, I think that we do have a whole series of letters that were by both sides, and that was one that was given to her as in regards to problems with discovery.
Well, I object as far as the foundation, I object as far as that it's hearsay. I believe it's prejudicial hearsay. Statements by Tricia Smith, who's not been called as a witness at this point before the jury. And
Well, the only foundation was, do you recognize the letter? Yes, that was it. That's the only question asked on that letter.
Well, I understand that, but the questions right before that were about problems with discovery and do you recognize the letter? So obviously there's a question of whether it goes to her state of mind as to.
Well, she testified that she believed that there were problems with discovery. I mean, if we're gonna mark this to come in, if we're talking about problems with discovery, then I also think that the deposition of Dan Broderick ought to come into evidence so that the jury can see what discovery was actually turned over at that point.
Let me take a look at the letter.
It's being offered for its truth, and it's hearsay.
And Your Honor, it may be easy if maybe what we can do is identify there was lots of letters shown on the witness stand for the purpose of refresher recollection, and all they are is letters going back and forth.
Well, we'll do them one at a time. That's fine. I'm not going to make a blanket ruling on letters.
And I believe counsel's right. I think if letters are just shown to refresh recollection, then the letters don't come in. Whatever's shown for refreshing recollection does not come into evidence. But I think he's right. I think it works both ways.
I think he's right and it works both ways also. But I don't think I want to make a blanket ruling as to all letters.
No, I agree, because some were asked just to refresh recollection and some were for other reasons.
This AAA will not be received. This was just the one foundational question was asked. Clearly is offered for the truth of the matter stated. It starts off with, I'm writing this letter, make a last final demand for discovery. Tricia Smith is the author of the letter and has not testified, and there's no indication as to what any response was. So I'll not receive AAA on the basis of hearsay and the basis of lack of foundation. If you want to call Mrs. Smith or whatever and make a better foundation, I'm not saying it might not become admissible, but for now, AAA is not received. Next.
Defense double P.
All right, that's a one-page letter, January 28, 1986, from Mr. Broderick to Mrs. Broderick.
Yes, and I just,
I'll withdraw, Your Honor. I don't remember why it was introduced at the time.
All right, without objection, I assume, Ms. Wells?
yes.
All right, that's withdrawn.
I guess we have several diary entries. I guess we should deal with them all at once.
Well, I think you need time to review those, don't you, anyway?
Well,
those are the ones
some have already been marked.
Oh, okay, well, let's do the diary all at one time, if that's all right. All right, we'll do.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
Yes.
Defense triple K was simply a letter that.
One-page document response to the defendant's offer to settle in 1987.
Correct. It was written by Ms. Smith to Jerry Perry, copied to Daniel Broderick.
No, you mean it was written by, Gerald Perry, too. Yes.
That's it backwards.
Yeah, you said it backwards, but that's fine.
I don't see the relevance of it first.
Well, one problem I noted at the time was that it doesn't have a whole lot of meaning unless we know what offer was rejected.
That's right.
That's because I saw the problem with that at the time, and I don't recall anybody ever marking what the offer was unless I missed something.
That has not been marked. It was my, if this is to come in, then I would want to introduce the offer.
Well, I think that's, in fairness to everybody, I think that has to be. It doesn't do much good to say I reject your offer if we don't know what we're rejecting. So this is your exhibit, Mr. Early.
Well, I'm gonna need to put the defendant back on the stand to identify her offer.
Well, they may stipulate that. I'm gonna ask Mr. Early, or he may not want to put this in. I don't know. That's,
But I talked to my client about that. I just have to go through the testimony and see. I'd like to look at the transcript and
All right.
see what the questions were asked surrounding that.
all right, I'll just reserve ruling on that for this point. All right, what's next?
Now, there's the defense W, which without reference to the details, I'd like to approach sidebar with respect to this letter.
Well, I know what that letter is, and that letter is not going to be received. That letter can be marked as a court's exhibit or just left SW not received. Hasn't been identified by any witness anyway.
Well, it was identified as being seen, it just that they received it.
Well, just one witness said he received it, but didn't adopt any of the contents and had nothing to do with the writing of it or the drafting the contents of.
I understand the court's ruling, and I'm sure it's the same as it was last time. And
This letter wasn't an issue last time. Are you-
No, I'm saying that the last time we had it before the witness.
Yeah, all right,
Okay, so I'm not gonna argue any further unless for some reason it becomes relevant.
all right. So W is not received.
Your Honor, the exhibits that are not being received but have been marked, you still want your clerk to have those?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, sure, most certainly. Absolutely.
Well,
The only ones that either lawyer can take are those that have been withdrawn by stipulation.
Defendant's Exhibit T, which was a letter, purports to be a letter from Dan Broderick to Larry Broderick regarding Kim. I object to this on hearsay and relevance grounds. The defendant never testified about anything to do with this. It was merely identified, I believe, by Kim.
That would have been during Kim Rogers.
It's a January 20th, 87, two-page letter, according to my rough notes, just trying to find where the witness identified it. This was on October 22nd. Kim Gopper identified as a copy of the letter that Mr. Broderick had sent to his brother Larry.
And that's
I
it.
don't see the relevance of it. You want to make an offer of relevance, Mr. Early?
Yeah, my offer of relevance was, Your Honor, that was in regards to her testimony that the relationship with the father, and I asked her about it, without the way they communicated, was she upset about that?
Let me see the letter. if I could.
And I believe there was some testimony that she had wished her father had spoken to her before that was sent.
Yes, I recall that.
There was no testimony, though, Your Honor, that Elizabeth Broderick knew anything about this or was upset about it in any way.
No, and in fact, it starts out personal and confidential, so it's pretty obvious this wasn't going to be distributed. The only copy went to Kim. All right, T is not received. It's not being relevant.
The defense 00, there are a series of letters from Danny and Rhett to Elizabeth Broderick from camp.
7 pages of letters, and that's another one that I put a big question mark by at the time. It was identified. Let me see what.
Did you want to see the exhibit?
I'll always check my notes I took at the time also. Let's see, that was identified on November 4th. Letter received by Mrs. Broderick from her boys while they were at camp. I noted to myself I didn't see the relevance there. My notes were that they just were offered to show the boys liked and missed their mother. But I don't think there's any issue as to that, is there?
Defendant's SS also goes along with that. It's another letter that was marked separately, but same thing.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the letters.
SS.
Thank you.
All right, I have reviewed double O, the letters, but they're actually, they all start out with Mom, I miss you very much, or Mom, I miss you a lot. I don't think there's any issue as to that, is there? Or is it offered for some other purpose, or?
Your Honor, they were brought in last time. And the problem is that during this period of time, and Elizabeth Broderick testified that the kids went to camp without any choice from her, and she was upset that they were away during a time she wanted to see them. We're obviously writing to her, asking for things we normally ask the caretaker for, which she wouldn't have been at that time.
What was the time frame? None of these are dated, and my notes at least don't reflect anybody testified as to the date.
Summer of '85.
Summer of '85.
Those are, Your Honor, I believe those are 86, because there's a note in there that they're being kept, that they're going somewhere else for an additional 2 weeks, and that's when the bifurcation order was done.
Well, they're clearly written from camp because they have a camp address, Rodero camp address. They're of marginal relevancy, but there certainly is nothing inflammatory. I'll receive double O. Take us to double S. This is a letter from my notes, is a letter that Lee wrote.
That would have been in 85, Your Honor, I believe.
And you object to double S on relevancy grounds?
Yes, Your Honor.
are some of these, I'll receive it if you really want me to, but some of these your client may just want to keep. I mean, this got little stickers on it. She would think she may want to keep some of this kind of stuff for herself. I don't know. I mean, it's just cumulative to what the boys' letters say.
Your Honor, I'll withdraw.
I just, it is a cute little letter, you know.
That's fine.
All right, I assume that he can withdraw that without objection.
Yes.
What else do we have?
Defendant's P, and I thought that the court had already ruled on this when we were at sidebar, that this was not relevant and not to be admitted, but I don't know.
That, yes, I did.
Okay.
And also it was never identified, there was never testimony, there was never any testimony allowed as to this, so P is not received.
At this point, Your Honor, I've got a few more that I'd like to review before we talk, so maybe Mr. Lopez has some we can deal with.
All right.
Okay, Your Honor, I do have an objection to 112.
12. I really didn't, that's the Rieger article, January 1989, and I'm not quite sure of the relevance of that either, as well.
Well, she testified that one of the things that she was so upset about was the comment that Mr. Broderick made in this article. And the fact that it ended with the comment about it's not going to end until one of us is gone. There was direct testimony regarding that. And I think if, there's going to be testimony regarding the effect of this article on her, that it's only fair that the entire article come out.
Well, in addition to what you just said, my notes also indicate that there was testimony about the trial being open, whether or not the trial was going to be open.
Right.
I haven't read the article, so I don't know if that's in there, but there was testimony in that regard.
The fact that there was problems and objections with it being closed and with the reporters wanting to write an article and the defendant's allegations that Mr. Broderick was going to sue them if they did, and therefore nothing got written. And this is the article that did get written.
All right, the testimony is that, and she was asked directly that there was a watered down article written that was not the article that originally that she talked to him about was going to be written. The article is just full of hearsay, and it's full of the reporter's conclusions as to who they either think is at fault or things about their opinion as to what's going on in the case. There's obviously no difference to that in any other letter that was shown to Mrs. Broderick to say, wasn't this said in this article or wasn't this said at this time?
Let me take a look at it.
And Your Honor, there are areas that have been highlighted. Counsel and I have already agreed that in any documents that have been highlighted, we'd obviously be giving a clean copy to the bar.
This really tests my eyesight. This is fine print. Would you shrink this about fourfold?
Yeah.
And I'll give you that.
Get it on that size paper.
Well, how about if I take this under submission? This is
Okay.
not your standard 2 pages. This is quite a bit of small type. Is that all right?
Yes, Your Honor, and it's the same as the other exhibits you've talked about, is we don't have in letters that were written to the various papers and things.
Well, those are being offered.
Well, let's just deal with them individually. I don't like to get in the
Right.
idea of lumping things. Let's do them one at a time. All right, I'll take that one under submission along with the,
What was that number, Your Honor?
that is 112, People's 112. And let me make myself a couple notes here for a minute. Okay, Mr. Early, what's next?
Your Honor, 105, which is a letter dated July 11th, 1986.
That was just showed to her to refresh her recollection as to the date that she might have pulled an antenna off the cars. And on seeing it, she said she remembered the date, so I don't know what the relevance would be.
Well, that was my recollection of that letter.
She didn't deny that she pulled the antenna off, she just wasn't sure when it happened, and she was shown that letter.
My recollection too is that she was asked though about whether or not he had made a request that she communicate with him in writing. And that this letter confirms that.
That she made a request.
I'm sorry, maybe I misspoke, that he made a request that she communicate with him only in writing after this point.
Did she deny that? I don't recall that testimony, you have to help me out here.
Well, she showed her a bunch of letters and would say, didn't he do this? And she would say, well, that's the letter, yes.
Well, the only thing I wrote down about the letter, as I've just told you, is a letter dated July 11th, 86. To refresh memory as to when the antenna was pulled off the car, and Mrs. Broderick made the statement, I'm surprised you have that letter, I thought I tore it up. And for a letter just to refresh your memory as to a date, I fail to see the relevance of the letter as to that.
Okay.
So that is, 105 is not received.
104, Your Honor, which is a court order.
Well, that was a minute order about returning the group wedding list, and I recall the testimony quite vivid about that. I think that is relevant, because there's definitely a conflict as to whether she had returned it to the marshal in the courtroom or not, etc. So 104 will be received. That 104 is the kind of thing I think I am required to take judicial notice of, since it's an order of a court.
Your Honor, there was 89 and 90.
Let's start with 89. That's a bill from Adelaide's florist, December 31st of 85. Refresh my recollection as well as what the relevancy was of that. It was
The defendant had denied using the word cunt at any time prior to December of 1986 when she received the note that she believed came from Linda. And this letter is dated December 1985 with the word cunt on it.
Your Honor, there's a problem with that though, Your Honor. We know that we don't know when she received it or when she sent
we
it
don't
back.
know when she wrote that on the bill.
No, but we do, Your Honor, and that's why People's 90 was marked, because People's 90, which is dated January 24th, 1986, which was sent back to her, which she acknowledged receiving, refers to her comments on that Adelaide's bill. I can show it to you. So she had to have written
All right,
that
let
on.
me see. My note I made at the time on 89 was that the defendant explained that she wrote that on there, but she didn't remember at what point in time. So
Right,
you're
but-
saying 90 explains the point in time?
yes, because then I asked her to identify 90, which is the letter that Dan Broderick sent back to her referring to that.
Let me see 90 when Mr. Lewis threw that. If that clears it up, then it's, it would appear to be relevant. Just need to see 90 really. Objections overruled and 89 and 90 are received.
There's number 70, Your Honor.
70 is a letter, November 85, from Mrs. Broderick to Mr. Broderick regarding furniture.
From Mr. Broderick, I think it was.
From Mr.
Oh,
Broderick.
excuse, that's correct. It's to Mrs. Broderick from Mr. Broderick. That's correct. That is the letter that, if I'm not mistaken, isn't that the one about get the furniture out of the garage or I'm going to give it away?
Yes, this is the letter that she referred to as a threatening letter.
I think that's objections overruled. That's received.
What number is that, Your Honor?
70.
Next is 86, Your Honor.
Yeah, it's an order of the court modifying a contempt sentence. And again, I think that's in the category where I almost have to take judicial notice of court orders.
Well, Your Honor, other than just the order, there's also the language of the judge that's in there.
Then let me take a look at it.
I mean, there's been testimony that he modified the.
The language that's referred to in that order by the
Well-
court is also referred to in another exhibit, or it refers to another exhibit. I don't know by number right now, but the letter that was written,
Well, the one thing it says is that the sentence is not being reduced based on respondent's letter to the court, which apparently was attached to the original orders Exhibit A. And there has been at least an inference that she was released because of the letter she wrote threatening to turn Judge Josephs into the Council on Judicial Performance or whatever that subject was, whatever it was she was going to try to turn him into. So I think that makes it, appear to make it relevant, Mr.
Your Honor, I have a real problem with that because the court, that is real protectionism of the judicial bench here because the court has admonished the jury if there's a question asked and there's a denial of it, there's no evidence of it. So in inference.
Let me take this under submission, and I don't know if Judge Josephs, when he was testifying the other day, said he had the letter. I don't know if anybody.
the letter's been marked, and I'm assuming,
I don't know if it's that letter. There's another letter from Betty Broderick to Judge Joseph that I received from you gave me Mr. Berry's file.
Well, then, in fairness to both of you, I think if I'm going to put in one, I should put in the other and not put either one in. I mean, they both talk about this talks about the letter. Apparently, the letter is marked as another defense exhibit.
that's correct, and it has the same language that's quoted in there.
The reason I introduced it, Your Honor, they only introduced page 4 of the letter. So I introduced the first 3 pages of the letter. That was the one where Elizabeth Broderick said, I wrote that at the direction of Tricia Smith. And the prosecution entered 1 page.
Well, you're entitled to have all 4 pages in. I guess what I'm saying is if we're going to put the letter in, then I think in fairness, we have to put this in, or otherwise we don't put either one in. I don't think that one side gets their exhibit in, the other side doesn't, when we're talking about the same incident. So I'll leave you two to just tell me how you want to go. Either I'll receive both of them or not receive either one, but they're tied together. And I don't think it's fair to put in half a loaf. And for the record, what's the defense exhibit?
It's triple L.
All right, so 86 and triple L, I'll wait. You two discussing those further, is that right?
Your Honor, that's not the letter that was introduced by the prosecution. It's not the court order, but another number here. And I'll have to look for it, Your Honor.
Well, let's. You don't have to do that right now, Mr. Early. You can get together on that, but I've made my position clear. Did you need a break? Sure. Why don't we take a short recess, say for 5 minutes? More recess.
Your Honor, just
Oh,
on
I'm sorry.
the exhibits that we were just talking about, People's 86, which was the court order,
Yes,
and then defendants triple L, which was the letter.
triple L, all right.
Counsel has indicated his agreement that both of those will come in.
All right.
And since triple L includes the last page, the fourth page, which has also been marked as People's 87,
Withdraw that without objection.
I'll withdraw that.
All right. So the record's clear. 87 and
People's 87 is being withdrawn.
without objection, Mr. Early?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. People's 86 is received without objection, Mr. Early?
Yes, Your Honor.
And defendant's triple L is received without objection, Ms. Wells?
Correct.
All right.
And also there was, I just noted defendants, some of our, we've got a couple of the exhibits that have been double marked.
All right.
Defendants triple O is the same as defendants triple A, which has already been, the court's already ruled on, so I'm just going to give that back to counsel to be withdrawn. Triple O, defendants triple O.
That's right. That is the same. All right. So you want to withdraw triple O, or do you want to leave it in and just have me not receive it?
Well, Your Honor, I can withdraw it, as long as the record reflects that if there's a problem with foundation, that it would apply, whatever foundation was delayed to either one would apply.
All right.
But I don't think there's any reason to keep an extra piece of paper on the court file.
Check my records on triple O then. Just a minute. All right, that was also, triple O was shown to Mrs. Broderick when she was on the stand on November 14th. And she identified it just as a letter from Tricia Smith. And it does have the same date, January 15th, of 88 as triple A.
Yes, they are the
It's the
same letter.
same letter.
Okay. If you want to withdraw triple O, then Mr. Early, that's,
Yes, Your Honor.
all right, triple O's withdrawn.
One is 88, Your Honor.
All right.
I asked the court, I believe,
To take-
judicial notice.
I did take judicial notice of that it was filed. I took judicial notice of that one.
Well, Your Honor, I think the court, that there was an order filed, but did the court take do we have the whole documents come in? We've taken judicial, that was one that was judicial notice of.
Of the fact that a contempt was filed on May 4th, 1988.
Yes.
And the substance of it. The defendant wouldn't admit that this was the substance of his allegation.
Let me see. That's correct. Contempt hearing on May 4th, 88. Defendant had denied that the basis of the contempt was the messages. I've got the specific message here. There's no sense in repeating it. It has several profane words in it. And I took judicial notice that that document was filed by the victim, Mr. Broderick, as the basis for the contempt. And so The objection to 88 is overruled.
Your Honor, well, first, may I look at it again?
Certainly.
Your Honor, because
Well, the message is only that while you're looking at my notes are the message was in sum and substance, listen, you fucking insane asshole. That was the basis of the contempt. The client said that it wasn't.
That's the first sentence.
No, I don't want to read the whole thing.
well, Your Honor, the problem is that this contains, again, Mr. Berry, when he files things, he files lots of orders. And
Can we clean it up? I think that part is the basis of the contempt. And the fact that it was filed May 4th, 88 is relevant. If there's irrelevant material in there, maybe we can excise it by agreement.
well, there's just, all there is one page that has what the message is. The rest is all, it has the front page, which is the contempt, and then one page, the other's all the other orders and.
Well, we probably don't need all the other orders. I presume this will also agree with that.
Well, there's the supporting documents.
Well, he's not contesting that, I don't think. Not only the argument with regard to supporting documents, it's the basis of the contempt and the date of the contempt were the matters that were an issue.
Well, there are attached to the prior restraining orders, but there is also attached the declaration of Dan Broderick, which refers to this message, which was one of the bases for the contempt.
Well, and see, that's the problem, Your Honor. I understand that that they asked about one part of that order. And if the court wants to put in, there was a contempt and attached to it that phone message, that's fine.
Okay, well, it's not the court putting anything in.
But no, what I'm saying is I'm objecting to everything else. There's the front page which says there's contempt. There's the other page that has the phone message.
All right,
Those were all that was asked about.
I think that's, my notes indicate that is correct. That was the reason it was marked, because she denied that was the basis of the contempt. So, as well as I think you should, shall we say, amend that exhibit to show the contempt and the basis of it, which, as I understand, is going to be about 2 pages. Is that right? Cover page and the page listing is the contempt.
Well, why don't you tell me which portion you want me to keep?
Well, keep the top page for sure. So that sets the hearing with the date. And page 1, which just merely sets out the fact she had knowledge of the restraining order. I think that is, the first 2 pages I think are appropriate. No need for the third
With
page.
the message on it.
Yes, which would be. And it says that the message is attached as Exhibit 1. So the first 2 pages and then Exhibit 1. That modification agreeable to you, Mr. Early, because I don't want her taking exhibits apart if you're going to object to her taking them apart.
No, Your Honor. I mean, other than the objection that I already had, if it's going to come in, I agree that's how it should come in.
All right. And as I just indicated, the first 2 pages and the actual message, which is on a separate page of the receipt.
Is that number 88?
Yes. Next.
There's 106.
Well, that's the order regarding the visitation switch in October '89. I think that's very relevant as to what dates were switched in view of the testimony as to whether or not your client had to rearrange her trip to Acapulco because of the switch in visitation.
There's a clean copy on, which is number 35. 106 has 35 as the same exhibit.
I'm not aware of that, but that's fine. If that's true, we don't need to both.
Yes, Your Honor, 35 is the clean copy, so I can withdraw 106 and offer 35.
106 withdrawn. Mr. Early?
Is what, Your Honor?
106 is withdrawn without objection.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. 35 will be received.
There was 79.
That was a stipulation and order in November of '86 for the defendant to receive $10,000. As I recall, that was relevant from the standpoint that was the same month where she had received a, shall we say, an IOU in lieu of her alimony, or in lieu of her support or community disbursement, whatever you want to term it. I think that was the same month she received a minus $1,300. And this was, I believe, put in to show that she did receive $10,000.
That's correct.
Thank you.
It does. First Amendment.
That would appear to be admissible.
Was there more on it?
No.
All right, 79 is received.
77, Your Honor.
That's a letter from Mr. Broderick to Mrs. Broderick, a one-page letter, July of '86. Something to do with vandalizing.
No, it's a letter, Your Honor, asking the defendant to try to do the best to minimize the trauma of the divorce to the children.
That had to do with what the vandalizing the house was doing to the children.
No, that's number 76, Your Honor. 77. 76 is the one that you're talking about.
76 I wrote down was a November '85 letter from Mr. Broderick to Mrs. Broderick to stop vandalizing the house.
That is
And then my notes on 77 are that's a letter July 21st, '86 from Mr. Broderick to Mrs. Broderick regarding stop vandalizing the house because of the effect that's having on the children.
Now, this is no longer, 77 is that we are no longer married. Oh,
That's correct. It doesn't refer to vandalizing though, Your Honor. It refers to attempting to minimize the trauma of the divorce by bad-mouthing one another.
All right, that's the 70,
That's
77.
Number 77.
And what's the objection to that, Mr. Early? On what basis?
that there's hearsay in it, Your Honor. I don't remember if it was done for anything other than a refresh recollection.
I think it was done to impeach because the defendant denied that Mr. Broderick had made those requests.
So my recollection also was put in on cross-examination of Mrs. Broderick on November 13th.
Well, but there's a problem of putting a whole letter in, Your Honor, that contains a lot of hearsay to impeach on one matter.
Well, let me see the letter. Well, Mr. Early's statement is true, but this entire letter is pretty short, it's 2 paragraphs, and the only topic is minimizing the trauma of the divorce you'll have on the kids. It talks about what you refrain from, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there is no other topic in here other than that one topic.
See, I understand that, but the letter's shown to her and she says, yes, that was written to me. So how does it, I can see if she denies that letter was ever written to her.
that it becomes relevant. But when she admits it, how does it become relevant then?
Well, go ahead, Ms. Weldon.
She denied that he made those kinds of requests, and it wasn't until I impeached her with the letter that she was forced to admit it, and she admitted receiving the letter. And her descriptions of these letters as being threatening, and every time he would write, they were threatening, and I was afraid. I think that it's fair to allow the jury to read the tenor of those letters.
There was only 2 letters that she talked. I believe she said that one was one that she did not appreciate, and then there's a letter in December of '85 that the court has already admitted as to the furniture, I thought.
Well, that's what I mean. She says she didn't receive appreciating it. I mean, didn't appreciate receiving it. Goodness.
Well, this I think that people are entitled to put it in context from their point of view. 77 will be received.
Your Honor, number 76.
That was the 85 letter and vandalizing the house.
Yes, Your Honor. And I don't remember any denial of that letter. That was just.
No, I don't either. My notes were that she didn't deny vandalizing the house. The content of the letter was regarding stop vandalizing the house, and there's never been any denial that she did it.
Well, one of the other relevancies of this letter, though, is that it's entitled Dear Bets, and the time period of that, and the fact that she claimed that anytime he would write to her and say Dear Bets, that meant that there were hidden messages and that he was attempting to get something from her. And it's clear from this letter that he's not attempting to get anything from her.
Well, that would be true in saying you have to stop vandalizing, but she was never asked about that letter and Dear Bets in it.
Not that the Dear Bets is so peripheral as to not let it in just because it says Dear Bets.
Well, but the defendant was the one that made that an issue, Your Honor, and said that there's a difference when he calls me Elizabeth Ann and there's a difference when he calls me Bets, and that he's.
I remember her testimony on that one. So let me see the letter. Have you looked at this exhibit, Mr. Early?
Yes.
And you're aware of the attachment that shows all the deductions for expenses?
Yes.
And you still don't want it in?
Right.
All right, well, my tendency would be to not admit it, but this is one of those rare areas where I think I want your client to tell me that she doesn't want it in, if you don't mind. Because there was considerable testimony about deductions, and this lists a half-page of deductions.
Let me show her the letter, Your Honor, just so she.
The one I'm interested in is page 2 right there. Just one of those rare exhibits that cuts both ways. I just want to make
I know.
sure.
And she agrees not to request it coming down.
All right. And 76 is not received.
At 94, I just don't remember, I don't remember the testimony with that, Your Honor.
All right, that was a letter, January 18th of 88, from your client to her attorney, Tricia Smith. And
It was identified by the defendant as a letter being sent to Tricia Smith regarding no longer wanting her services.
it had to do with your client firing Tricia Smith. And there's also an indication from the transcript of the divorce hearing that Tricia Smith indicated she had received the letter. There was also cross-examination that Mrs. Broderick had written in her book that she fired Tricia Smith. And the issue, of course, was that the defendant said that she did not fire Tricia Smith. So People's 94 is received.
Your Honor, the next one is People's 107.
Now, that's
People's
the
107 is the,
real estate ad for Titus Yellow in 89.
yes, Your Honor.
What's the objection to that?
Well, Your Honor, first of all, this is a price of 1.5 million, and I think it sold for around $800,000.
No, it sold
900.
for over $1 million. Sold for $1 million. Sold for $1 million,
Maybe 1.2.
1.2, I believe.
No, Your Honor, Mr. Mark Woods sold that.
Well, what it's listed at and what it sells at really is not making a difference. Most people don't pay the list price. Let me see, if I recall when it was testified to, it had something about walking distance to the beach or something like that.
Yes, it's a description of the house and it shows a picture of the house.
Yeah, it lists the property as basically ocean view property, and La Jolla Shores, easy walk to the beach, so I think that is relevant.
I'm just indicating, I think it's misleading when there's,
Well, I understand your objection as to the price, but that nobody's testified one way or the other as to what it's sold for. I don't see the price as being an issue. The description of the easy walk to the beach is certainly relevant, so 107 will be received.
what I thought.
107.
57.
That's a copy of a letter to Lee from Mrs. Broderick, November 16th of 89. It was apparently sent from Las Colinas. Mistaken.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Irwin.
I just didn't know what the relevance was, Your Honor.
I'm looking for my notes, Ms. Wells, can you?
Well, I mean, her mental state before, during, and shortly after these homicides has definitely been put in issue. And I think the contents of this letter is extremely relevant to tell the things that she was interested in, the things that she was directing people to do on her behalf, the closeness to the time of the homicides. I think it's an extremely relevant letter. testimony by the defense psychiatrist or psychologist that she may have even been in a position of hysterical shock following these homicides for a period of time, and I think this letter
That was just the one day, Your Honor.
provides it.
And this letter is dated 11/16.
My notes indicate that Betty Broderick identified it on cross-examination as the letter that was instructing, her mother instructing her on things to do. Can I see the letter? These two are received. All right, the relevancy objections overruled. This is 57's received.
Next one is 102, Your Honor.
Now, this is just the court documents, or documents from the village file that the defendant wrote on. She doesn't deny doing it. Is there any need to put the documents in?
Well, she does deny doing some of it though. She wouldn't identify the bullshit. She wouldn't identify,
She said she couldn't identify her handwriting on it.
well, yeah, she was very oppositional about this. She didn't just freely say, yes, this is my handwriting and I did it. She wouldn't admit it.
She showed her one thing and said, I don't know if that's my handwriting. All the rest, she looked and said, it appears to be mine. I just can't tell if that's my handwriting.
The only thing she said she didn't know if she did is write the word that you just mentioned on the first page. She recognized the handwriting on the documents 2 and 3. She said she did write on documents 2 and 3. I just don't see the relevance of it. She admits she wrote on court documents, that put the documents in. I don't see the need for that. She denies writing one word, but quite frankly, so what?
She didn't deny it. She said, I just can't tell if that's my handwriting.
Well, but
That was the only thing she denied.
Come on, you can't just say, I mean, you recall the tenor of her testimony, Your
I
Honor.
remember it, but that was I took pretty good notes in that area. She just denied writing on the first document or the first page. The other, she did recognize her handwriting and said that she wrote those.
But don't you
Is there
think it's,
something
I think
different?
it's relevant how she wrote on the court documents.
Well, let me see 2 and 3. Are there no foul language, shall we say, on 2 and 3?
I don't know what you mean by two and three.
The 3 separate documents that she wrote on. What's attachment 13? The page that's listed at the bottom of attachment 13 is the one she said she didn't know if she did that.
Well, I think circumstantially for the jury to be able to figure out whether she did do that or not, they have to see the things that she wrote on the other documents.
The question was, is that your handwriting? She just said, I don't recognize, I can't tell from this one whether it's my handwriting, but I wrote all over the file.
A lot of pages in here that aren't written on also. I don't see the relevance of this. She hasn't denied writing on the divorce file, and this is not a divorce trial. 102 is not received.
Connor, I wonder if there's not a whole lot left
take the recess now. All right, certainly. We're adjourned for the evening recess.
Record and spell your last name.
It's Jesus Manuel Lopez, Lopez.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, what is your present occupation?
I'm a private investigator
Okay, and how long have you been a private investigator?
since 1982.
And before you were a private investigator, what was your background?
Well, I did immediately prior to being an investigator, I had a business in Mexico, and before that, I used to be a member of the San Diego Police Department.
And how long were you a member of San Diego Police Department?
Almost 11 years.
Okay, and as a member of the San Diego Police Department, did you go through the normal training for a San Diego police officer?
Yes, I did.
And when you were working for the San Diego Police Department, did you get involved in any special units in the San Diego Police Department?
Yes.
And which units were those?
There were several. I was a member of the SWAT team. I was a SWAT supervisor. I was the director of the Border Crime Task Force, and I was also established and directed the gang detail.
Okay. Now, during the time that you were involved in the SWAT team, was there training involved with shootings and situations where shooting would be where shootings would happen?
Yes.
And as a member of the Border Patrol, was the Border Patrol team, was that something that you were a founder of?
Well, the founder was a gentleman named Dick Snyder.
Okay. And were you one of the original people in that?
I was in charge of it, yes, from the beginning.
Okay. And what was the Border Patrol team?
Well, it was a Border Crime Task Force is what it was. And we were formed in 1976 to combat the crime committed against illegal aliens, undocumented people that would cross in from the United States from Mexico, from the Tijuana area. And we would dress up as the undocumented people ourselves and become the targets of for the bandits that were preying on them.
Okay. And in that process of becoming that target, did that Border Patrol team get involved in shootings?
Yes.
Okay. And were you yourself involved in shootings?
Yes, I was.
Okay. And were the Border Patrol team and you within that Border Patrol team, is that something that's been a character in Wambach's book, Lines and Shadows?
Yes, it is.
And after you retired from the police department, did you get involved in any other activities in regards to shootings?
I wasn't involved personally in shootings, but I worked for a law firm by the name of Thistle and Krinsky, who represented just police officers primarily. And part of my duties were, as an investigator, was to interview the officers and conduct investigations anytime that they felt that they needed legal assistance. Some of those investigations involved officers that were involved in shootings.
And would you get involved in either their testimony and their preparation to testify before any boards?
Usually before the shooting review board.
Okay. And have you testified as an expert before in the areas of shootings?
Yes.
Okay. During when you worked for the Border Patrol team and for the SWAT team, did you also get involved in reviews of shootings that took place during that training?
Yes.
Were you involved yourself in any personal times where you were involved, where you fired weapons?
Yes, I was.
And approximately how many times was that?
I was while a member of the Border Crime Task Force, I was in 6 different shooting situations. 5 of the 6 I shot.
Okay. And when you say you shot, does that mean that you wounded somebody?
Yes.
Okay. And how would you get involved in those situations?
Well, each one was different, but what would happen is that I was confronted by an armed suspect, somebody attempting to victimize me, either with a handgun, a rifle, or a knife. And even though it happened many, many times, the few times where I was involved in a shooting where I actually shot, something triggered within me that kicked me into what was a term, for better lack of better term, a survival mode. And then I just directed my attention to this disturbance, and I wanted to eliminate it. So I would shoot at it.
Okay. Now, when you say that you would shoot at it, has there been times where you have shot people a number of times?
Yes.
And have there been times where you've shot at a number of people?
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you, and during the training that you did at the SWAT team and at the Border Patrol, when you were training people for that, would those people also be involved in shooting situations where it would be set up of whether they were when they should fire and when they should not?
Yes.
Okay. And would that training involve times where it was appropriate that they should fire and then something set up where it would have been inappropriate for them to fire?
Yes.
Okay. And were the officers always firing only at the appropriate times, or would they do both?
They would do both.
Okay. And would you then have debriefings as to the effects that the shootings had on them, both at the appropriate and inappropriate times?
Yes, to a degree, yes.
Okay. Now, during the time that a shooting is taking place, has it been your experience that you are able to remember the amount of shots you fired?
No.
Okay. And can you explain that?
Well, I have been wrong in every shooting that I have been involved in. There were times when I thought I shot 2 or 3 times when in fact I emptied my weapon. I was never able to accurately state the number of shots that I had fired. And I found that to be the case with other officers that were also in my unit. And we would ask, or they would be asked, or I would ask how many times they had fired. Usually they would not be correct as to the actual amount of rounds that were expended in their weapons.
Okay. Were there times where you were able to hear the individual shots?
In the 5 shooting situations that I was in while a member of the Border Crime Task Force, I never recalled hearing any of the shots.
Okay. Do you recall at all whether you would remember in the shootings, would you remember the gun?
No. You talk about my gun?
Yes.
No.
Would you remember pulling the trigger of the gun?
No.
Okay. Now at times, at times when after the shootings are over with, was it always that you knew, was it a time where you would just stop or know that it was time to stop?
In my situations, when the danger would hit the ground, that's when, I would kick back into whatever other mode I was in. I would start to hear again. I knew what was going on. I wasn't just focused in on this particular disturbance. Once it hit the ground, then I kicked back in.
Have you ever had the experience of running out of bullets and not knowing that?
Yes.
And what would happen to let you know you were running out of bullets?
Well, after the person would have hit the ground, I remember when I kicked back into my non-survival mode that I was still pulling the trigger, yet I was totally empty. My weapon was empty.
Have you been in a position where you have thought that you have not hit anybody or not hit people that you shot at and found out different later?
Oh, would you repeat that for me?
Okay. Has it been a situation that when you shoot at people that you always know that you have in fact hit them?
No.
Okay. And what experiences have you found in that?
Well, not only that you don't hit them, it's sometimes where you think you hit them, it doesn't turn out to be that way. I was in one situation where I had shot at 4 people, almost at the same time, trying to shoot at 4 people. I knew that I hit one because I captured him. The other 3 fled the scene, and I found out later on that another one of the suspects that was there, I had shot in the chest. There was also a situation where I shot an individual 5 times at a distance of about 2.5 to 3 feet who had a gun on me. And I was aiming at his chest, looking up at him. I thought I fired 5 rounds. I thought I had hit him all rounds in the chest. And in reality, I did hit him in the chest, but the last round ended up getting him in the buttocks area. And I had not seen that when I was shooting him.
Now, you've seen the testimony of Gene Wohlberg, is that correct?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And you know how, at least from the testimony of independent experts as independent witnesses, how fast the shots were fired.
Yes, approximately 1.5 seconds.
Okay. Now, is there any question that that people that you've seen, either yourself or people who have been through the SWAT training or Border Patrol training, that that the shots in this case appear to be directed towards the bed in this case?
Yes, they do appear to be that way.
Okay. I take it that you're not able to tell whether this person planned to shoot that way in this case itself, or whether the shots were a result of any reaction they had to anything?
No, I can't tell that.
Okay. In the training of officers, is there training as far as trying to keep the gun from moving, recoil, or how to put it in position?
Well, there's a technical training that the officers will go through. It's totally unrealistic from what happens to you in a shooting situation, but
Objection, Your Honor, to object to the relevance of training of police officers.
Sustain.
At the time that the police officers, I take it that when they go through either the SWAT or the Border Patrol teams, that the police officers that cannot adapt to making sure they only shoot the dangers, those police officers are not continued in that training.
well, if they cannot adapt after several attempts, yes.
So in other words, if you have a hostage situation, they end up shooting the hostages each time, those people that don't make the teams.
Well, they continue to do that, yes, that is correct.
I have no further questions.
Ross Salmon?
Good morning, Mr. Lopez.
Good morning.
When was it that you started as part of the Border Patrol Task Force?
That was formed in 1976.
Okay, and you indicated that during that period of time, you were involved in 6 separate shootings, correct?
Well, yes, while on the task force I was.
Okay, I'd like to talk a little bit about each one of those. Can you describe for us what the circumstances were in the first time that you actually ended up shooting at somebody?
Yes, the first time was February the 1st of 1977, approximately 5:30 in the afternoon. One of the officers who was walking with me, we were dressed as undocumented aliens, walking along a creek bottom, and as we made a quick turn, there were 2 men approximately 15 feet from us. One had a .45 pointed at us. So we stopped. We were totally surprised. We stopped. He cocked the .45 and said immigration in Spanish. It was our training to squat down as undocumented aliens would do in the hillside area where we were working. And as we did, the 2 men approached us. The one with the gun put the gun at my head, a distance of maybe, a foot. When he turned the gun towards my right, to the officer to my right, I was holding on at the time to my shoulder holster, the gun in my shoulder holster. I pulled it out and I shot him 5 times.
Okay, so if I understand you correctly, when you first were confronted by these bandits, they did have a gun pointed at you. They had the .45 pointed at you.
Yes.
But you did not shoot at that time, correct?
No.
It wasn't until you actually heard them cock the gun, come up closer to you, and put the gun within 3 feet of your head that you responded with gunfire, correct?
Well, you're right, but I had no choice.
I understand, absolutely.
I could not respond at the initial time.
Okay.
Right.
You were able to recognize, at least at that point, that there wasn't a need to use deadly force, even though they were holding a gun on you.
until you felt they were actually going to use that deadly force. Is that
No,
okay?
when we came around, he had us cold with the 45.
Uh-huh.
There's nothing I could have done at the time. I didn't feel I could pull the gun out fast enough to shoot him at that time.
Okay.
I was waiting for my time, is what I
Okay.
was doing.
And then when he moved towards you and he cocked the gun and put the gun towards your head, that's when you responded.
It's when he turned it to my right, to point it at the other officer. That's when I pulled the gun out.
And was this the situation where you indicated that you shot 5 times all at this person, correct?
Yes,
And all 5 of those bullets hit him?
yes,
And he survived that, right?
yes,
Okay. And this was the situation where you were shooting at his chest. He was hit in the chest, but there was a period of time where he apparently turned away from you and you shot him once in there.
apparently so. That's what happened, even though I couldn't see it when I was shooting at him
What were you shooting at him with?
with a 38.
Okay. What kind of bullets?
38 caliber standard issue by the police department.
Now, what was the second situation that you ended up responding with deadly force?
Well, there was a situation where we were approached by 2 individuals in the canyons. One of them had a poncho on, and they approached us and engaged us in a conversation. The guy with the poncho then flipped over his poncho like you see in a movie and held a rifle out. They demanded our money, and since I was the one in the front, I was the closest. We again squatted down, but then he jumped close to me and had the rifle pointed at me. At that time, I pulled my gun out and shot him.
And obviously, again, you were responding at that point to, you felt that your life was in danger,
Yes,
that he was going to shoot you.
yes,
And you didn't respond immediately upon seeing the rifle. It wasn't until he jumped forward and pointed the rifle at you, correct?
that is correct.
Tell us about the third incident.
The third situation involved a confrontation, I don't know if there's a third or fourth, one of those, with the Tijuana police officers. 2 uniformed officers from Tijuana crossed the border with their guns drawn. I approached them with my gun in my hand and my badge in the other hand and informed them that we were police officers. The Mexican officer closest to me hit me with the barrel of his gun in the chest. I turned, jumped to my left, and he shot. And the bullet went in my clothing and out my collar, and I fired 2 shots.
So this was a situation where you were confronted by these 2 people they had the intent to rob you, correct?
That is correct.
And that intent was clear to you at the time.
Yes,
He first hit you in the chest with his gun, and then he actually shot at you with his gun before you returned fire, correct?
that is correct.
Now, you indicated that these were people from the Tijuana police. Were they actually Tijuana policemen, or were they just posing?
No, they were Tijuana police officers in uniform.
But they were engaged in robbing illegal aliens? Is that what they were doing?
That is correct.
Okay. How about the next incident?
There was a situation where we had a group of bandits that was robbing in a certain area. And what they would do is that as the undocumented aliens would hide in this drainage pipe, there was a drainage pipe between the United States and Mexico, waiting for darkness so they could come across. This group of bandits would then come in to the drainage pipe, pull them out, and they would rob them and rape the women, and they've killed several people. So I decided to go into the drainage ditch, and I was in there when I was pulled out of the drainage ditch by these group of bandits. And there were 4 bandits at the time.
Were these bandits armed?
Yes.
How were they armed?
One had a rifle, one had a handgun, and one had a knife.
And what happened?
Well, initially, the lead bandit that I was trying to get had a ski mask, and so when he pulled me out, all I could see was a ski mask, and I knew that I was glad I finally had him. But then when I was pulled out out of the drainage pipe, I saw that on my left was a man with a rifle. There was another man in front of me. There was a guy with a handgun aimed at me, and the guy with the ski mask had a knife and was coming at me. So I jerked his hand away, and I tried to shoot everybody at the same time.
Okay. So you shot at all 3 or 4 of these robbers?
I shot at everybody I could.
Okay. And did you hit, was that the incident where you indicated that you hit one without realizing that you hit the other one?
Right, and I may have even hit more.
And Was there, did they escape from you at that point, or did you actually capture them?
I captured the guy with the ski mask.
Okay. Did you continue to shoot at the others as they were escaping?
No.
How about the next incident? We're on number 5.
That situation involved a group of 3 bandits that came at us with knives. One of the bandits got behind me. He had a butcher knife. As I turned to face him, he started to stab me with the butcher knife and cut me on the left hand, and I pushed him back and then pulled out my gun and shot at him.
So he was actively in the process of attempting to stab you when you shot him, correct?
That is correct.
And you felt your life was in danger at the time.
Yes.
And then how about the 6th incident?
The last incident, it was 2 bandits, one armed with a gun, one armed with a knife, who had killed a 16-year-old boy the previous week, the week before us. We encountered them in the hills, and they started shooting. My men started shooting back, and I ended up chasing the guy with the handgun, chasing him in the canyons, but I did not fire in that situation.
Okay, so in this situation, you were confronted by these bandits. They actually started shooting at you first, correct?
Yes,
You returned some fire.
my men did.
Your men did. You did not.
I did not.
Did you continue to chase them in an attempt to capture them?
Yes.
Okay. But while you were chasing them, while they were running away from you, you did not shoot at them. Is that
No,
correct?
that is correct.
Okay, so you recognize that at that particular point, they were not an immediate threat to you, to your physical danger, because they were running away and you did not shoot, correct?
No, in fact, the guy I was chasing was the guy with the gun. He would turn. I was a distance of maybe 5 to 6 feet behind him. He would turn around and shoot at me. And for some reason, I just didn't feel that I was going to be shot, which was not very good thinking at the time. But that's the reason I did not return the fire.
Okay, because you didn't feel at that particular point you were going to be shot.
That is correct.
Okay. Now, it is correct to say that in each one of these incidences that you've been involved in, you were actually confronted by people with knives and guns who were attempting to kill you, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And you were responding by shooting at them in order to save your life, correct?
That is correct.
And you felt at the time that if you didn't respond in that manner, that it was likely or possible that you were going to get killed.
Yes.
Now, there were never any incidences that you were involved where you snuck up on unarmed people with the intent to kill them once you caught them in a helpless position.
No.
And there were never any situations where you snuck up on unarmed people where you intended to confront them with your gun to force them to do something that you wanted them to do.
No.
Now, you indicated your words, I believe, were when you perceive a danger, that is what you attempt to eliminate, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so when you perceive a danger to you, you get into what you said was a survival mode, and what you're intending to do is to eliminate that danger when you shoot at them, correct?
That is correct.
So it doesn't, when we're not really talking about what you're thinking about before, what might have happened minutes before or hours before or what happened after. We're talking about at the actual time that you're shooting at someone, you're shooting at them because you're intending to eliminate them, correct?
What happens just before is important too. It's your perception which kicks in this mode.
Okay.
And once that's kicked in, you have no control over it.
And let's assume that even it's your perception, whether it's reasonable or not, that you're in danger. When you shoot, you're in that mode of intending to kill and eliminate what you perceive to be the danger, correct?
You're trying to eliminate that danger.
Okay. And you indicated that in each of the experiences that you had when you shot under these circumstances, that you didn't recall hearing the sound of the gun, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And so if someone has indicated that they did recall hearing the 5 shots of the gun, for example, that would be a circumstance that was different than your circumstance, correct?
That is correct.
And even if they were to say that maybe they didn't hear the 5 shots, but they heard at least 1 shot or they heard an explosion. That's a different situation than the situation that you were in under these circumstances, correct?
That is correct. And in conversations with my men, when we would be in the same gunfight, some would recall not hearing anything. Some would recall hearing several other shots.
Now, even when you talked a little bit about the SWAT team and the training of SWAT team officers, and some officers shooting perhaps at an appropriate time or perhaps at an inappropriate time, those were situations that were set up where the SWAT team officers believed that they were being, or they might be presented with a danger to them, correct?
That was part of the scenario.
Okay. I mean, when you go into a situation where there's possibly hostages, you know that that's a dangerous situation. You know there's people in there with guns or knives that might take you by surprise and shoot and kill you, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And you're going into that situation expecting that danger and knowing that that danger is present, correct?
Yes.
Those do not involve situations of sneaking into people's homes when you know that they're asleep and unarmed, correct?
Repeat that.
The hostage situations where you'd have
Oh,
a
hostage
SWAT team
situation.
coming in to save somebody would not involve sneaking into a house where people are sound asleep and no apparent danger at the time.
No, that's more of a narcotics operation.
Okay. Now, when you are shooting at somebody with the intent to eliminate them like you've described, you are obviously, I think you indicated, you're focusing your attention on that target, correct?
Yes, on whatever the disturbance is.
Okay, and when you say disturbance, I mean, we're talking about this person that is confronting you with deadly force.
Yes,
And you do focus in on that person, right?
that's all you focus in on.
Okay, and you focus in on the fact that you've got a gun and you're pointing it at them in order to shoot them, correct?
It's more than that. All you do, in my experiences, is concentrate on this danger or disturbance. You do not, I never once recall a gun or me shooting at them. Obviously, I was doing that, but I was focusing only on the target, this danger, trying to eliminate that danger.
Okay, and you were concentrating on them. You were concentrating on whether they were moving or whether they weren't moving, whether they were coming at you or continuing to come at you, those kinds of things, correct?
It's not as clear cut as that. All you do is concentrate on them. And obviously, if they move, you're going to focus as to where they move. You're going to go with them, or if they come at you, you're obviously going to, you're going to be focused on them,
Okay.
whatever their movements are.
And you continue to focus on them if they are moving, correct?
As long as you still perceive the danger.
Okay. And you're not saying in this case, you're not expressing or forming any opinion that the shooting in this case was not an intentional shooting, correct?
That it was not an intentional?
Yes.
I'm not expressing an opinion either way.
Okay. And you don't believe that this particular shooting was a panic shooting, what might be called a panic shooting, or what's known as panic shootings in police lingo?
Well, okay. Panic shootings, where I would see it, you would scatter shots everywhere in the room, which is different than an accidental shooting where you may fire some shots
Okay.
without scattering them all over the room.
And you also have no disagreement with the fact that this particular shooting in this case was accurate shooting. The intended victims were shot accurately. They were deadly shots, each one of them that landed into their bodies, correct?
Well, they're obviously deadly shots if somebody dies. It's not an accurate shooting when you're in this mode. You direct your shots. Again, you do not aim. You don't have time to do that. You direct your shots at the target, at
Okay.
the disturbance or the danger.
And when you say aim, I know some people have different understandings of what you mean by that. When you talk about aim, we're not talking about holding the gun up and looking through the sights, right? That's aiming a gun.
That is correct.
And that's what we sometimes do when we shoot at targets. I mean, you look
Right.
through the sights and you point at the target.
Right.
Okay. In this situation, you're not doing that. If you're, depending upon how close you are to somebody, depending upon where the intended target is, you're focusing on the target and you're just pointing your gun at the target, right?
Right.
Okay. And in your terminology, that you don't call that aim, you just call that directed shooting, correct?
That's what I call it, yes.
And if you are shooting at more than one person, and hitting more than one person, you're not necessarily, again, aiming through the sights, but you are directing your gun at the one person, and then you're directing your gun at the other person, correct?
Yes, and again, it depends on how far away you are, how close the persons are to each other.
Okay. And I take it it's fair to say that the closer you are to people, the better the chance is that you'll be accurate or that you'll hit your target?
Under the survival mode, yes.
Okay. Is it also fair to say that you have a better chance of hitting targets if they're stationary as opposed to moving?
When you're in the survival mode,
Mhm.
I couldn't tell you.
Okay. How about when you're not in a survival mode?
Sure, you have time to aim, and something that is not moving, I think would be easier to hit than something that is moving.
And where did you get the impression that all 5 of these shots were shot within a one and a half seconds?
I believe that was testimony given by somebody in the case and was relayed
Did you
to
hear
me by
Dr.
Mr.
Did you hear Dr. Schwartz's testimony, the next door neighbor who said that the shots were approximately a second apart, which would have made them approximately 5 seconds apart?
I don't remember that.
Okay. I have no further questions.
Redirect.
Sir, I take it that the people who go through the SWAT team training and the Border Patrol training, they know that they may be shooting at a target that presents a danger or one that doesn't. And when they go in, they know there's going to be different scenarios there.
Yes.
And I take it that the reason that you were put in charge of the Border Patrol team and you were a sergeant on the SWAT team?
Yes.
Sustained.
Well, what was the experience? Were police officers who were responding to the non-deadly ones made heads of the teams, or the ones who happen to be good at responding appropriately?
Objection.
Sustained.
Your experience, or I take it that your being in charge of these teams, was that on the basis of at least your experience and abilities, or was your name picked out of a hat? How did it go?
Objection. I don't think you described his experience in direct examination.
No, we're always going to answer that. How were you selected?
Well, to go on the SWAT team, I was a sergeant at the time, and I was selected by Bob Bergring. I did not volunteer. In fact, I didn't want to go, but he selected me to go on this for his own reasons. On the Border Crime Task Force, I was selected for that based upon my experience as a supervisor and my ability to deal with emergency situations.
Okay. And I take it that you've had not only the training of a police officer, but you had many years of training and experience on the force before you even got to this position.
Yes.
Have a moment, Harlan.
Certainly.
I know the question.
Recross. Witness be excused. Thank you. Thank you.
Elizabeth Armstrong, capital Armstrong.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Armstrong. Do you know the defendant in this case, Elizabeth Broderick?
Yes, I do.
Can you describe for us briefly how it is that you know her?
I met Betty about in 1979, just after her son Rhett was born, and we became friends through a group of friends from the bar auxiliary in my neighborhood, and we spent a lot of time together socializing, and both with our husbands and as friends after school and during the day, and had coffee and spent a lot of time together.
So is it fair to say that you spent time together as couples as well as individually as women friends?
Yes.
And directing your attention to approximately 1981, 1982, 83, 84, those several years before Dan and Elizabeth Broderick separated, did she ever have any conversations with you about finances or her knowledge of finances?
Yes. I recall specifically a time when she purchased, they had a computer, just one of the first home computers that I'd seen. And I was talking to her about, I got some Zips shoes or something for my son, and they had a Velcro tie. And I thought, oh goodness, nobody's ever going to learn how to tie shoes again. And she was very enthused. She thought Velcro was a wonderful new thing on the market, and that she was hoping to invest some money and buy some stock in Velcro and use her computer and learn about the stock market. But she seemed very knowledgeable about things that she would read about in the paper, WD-40. And we had a friend that was just named president of Dreyer's Ice Cream. She was real excited and was hoping to buy some stock in that.
So during this period of time, she was expressing interest to you, her own personal interest in financial areas, investing in stocks, those sorts of things, in following the stock market herself. And you indicated that something about a computer. Was she using a computer for any particular reason?
Well, she hoped to use the computer, and part of the reason that she purchased it was to follow the stock market. I know her brother was a stockbroker, and she had it in a family room, a guest room right off the kitchen.
Was Elizabeth Broderick an intelligent woman?
Very, very bright, very intelligent.
Did she make suggestions to you at all about stocks or investing in stocks?
No, I didn't know anything much about them. I thought it was exciting, the Velcro and the ice cream and all that, because they were things that were everyday parts of our life, but I didn't have any knowledge of how to invest.
And during that period of time, again in 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, did you, how would you describe Elizabeth Broderick's personality to the extent of whether she was making decisions about things, whether she was in control of things?
Well, in our times together, I mean, she was always fun and thinking of things to do, and very capable and willing to do things and trying new things and planning trips and planning vacations with her kids and making decisions about running her life and running her household and taking care of her children, and very capable.
Did she appear to be afraid or hesitant about making decisions about those kinds of things?
No, not at all.
Was there a time when she expressed her feelings to you about the Coral Reef house?
Well, off and on she did. They were looking for a new home. She didn't care for her house, and was hoping to buy a new home, to put a lot of the things in it that she hoped someday to have.
And when you say she didn't care for her house, you're talking about the Coral Reef house.
Her Coral Reef house, right. No, she didn't.
Sometime after separation, I take it you became aware that she separated from Dan Broderick.
Yes, I did.
Did she ever have a conversation with you regarding the fact that she had applied for a job as a stockbroker with one of the firms in town?
Yes, she did. There was, every January, there were a group of us that would meet for lunch to celebrate our birthdays. And we were waiting for Betty. She was a little late, and she came upstairs. We were at a hotel in La Jolla. And then she said she just had an interview with one of the stock brokerage firms in La Jolla. I don't know whether it was Dean Witter or Merrill Lynch. And
what was her attitude about whether or not she was going to go to work with them?
Well, she didn't want to. She felt that she didn't want to go through the training program that they had asked her to partake in if she was going to work for them or to be on a commission type salary.
Did she say why she didn't feel she wanted to go through the training program?
Well, she felt that she was fairly knowledgeable and that she did have a lot to offer, and we felt she had a lot to offer too, but she didn't want to go through the program that they specified, apparently.
And so she indicated she was not going to take the job?
No.
I have no further questions.
Cross Salmon?
When she was talking about the stock market, I take it that things she was talking about were things that housewives, things that you would see in the real world and say, hey, that's a good investment. All the mothers are buying this.
No, I wouldn't say all the mothers were buying it,
Well,
but she felt it was a good thing to buy.
I'm not saying that all the mothers were buying the stock, but it's, for instance, if you see that all the people who are having children are buying shoes with Velcro, she's saying, hey, it's probably a good investment because that seems to be the hot item.
Yeah, she was, yeah, right. I mean, she saw stuff that a lot of us didn't see.
Okay. She never talked to you about program trading, did she?
No,
She never talked to you about getting in on the margin and how to do that, did she?
I wouldn't have known much what she was talking about.
Her talk was about, hey, it's a good idea to buy something with Velcro because Velcro seems to be the popular thing right now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did she talk about, so when she was talking to you, were you thinking to yourself, well, boy, this is great. This woman's going to make a lot of money. She really knows how to invest money. Is that what you were thinking? I wish I could have someone investing for me like that.
No, I don't think that's exactly how I thought at the time. No, I just thought that she was smarter about it than I was.
Okay. Smarter about it in the sense that you would think that if family investments are going down the tube, you would go to the person who knows what to do rather than investing, throwing your money away towards bad things. You thought she was smart enough to make money, right?
Objection, Your Honor.
I don't understand your point.
Okay. Were you aware of, you were saying that she was buying, it was your understanding she was buying these stocks?
The way that she talked about it, I had a feeling that she was going to, or that she wanted to.
Okay. Did you ever come to learn that she had as much as $20 a month to invest in these stocks?
No, she never told me that.
Did you ever come to learn that there was hundreds of thousands of dollars of?
Objection, Your Honor, this is
Sustained.
Well, when she was talking to you about money, did she talk to you about that there was hundreds of thousands of dollars being invested in?
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Objection sustained. We don't repeat the question.
Well, did she talk to you about the money that was being invested by the family at all? Or did she just tell you about these stocks?
Well, she told me about the stocks, and then I did know about property in Colorado.
And did you know about any other investments?
No.
You indicated that she was making decisions.
Yes.
Okay. Were they unusual decisions?
No.
Okay, there were decisions that most people would make who had children and lived part of a family.
Well, she was able to, I don't know, make bigger and better ones as far as things that were very entertaining and fun and good times for her children and her family. And she was always kind of a step ahead of everybody in things that she wanted to do, and always gave the impression that they could, if she had an idea and she wanted to follow through, she could pretty much do that.
Did she not, were you ever involved in any decision making as to things to do?
Personally?
Well, it's vague.
With Elizabeth Broderick, were there times where you involved with decision making on things that you would both do?
Just socially.
Okay. So socially, were you involved in those decision making with Elizabeth Broderick, things that you would do?
Sure.
Okay. Was it something where you were, if you had a good idea, they did your idea? If she had a good idea, she did her idea?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Describe yourself, at least at that point in time, as friendly, equals?
Yes.
Okay. You weren't dominated by her, or she didn't dominate you?
No.
Okay. You never got that feeling as that one of you was dominating the other, did you?
No.
Okay. Did you ever, and you indicated that there was something about a job with a stockbroker. Do you know what stockbroker that was?
No, I don't remember specifically which one it was.
and she was she was talking about looking for a new home in the 80s.
Yes,
It became apparent to you at some point in time that they were earning more money than they had been earning, didn't they? And your husband knew Dan through bar auxiliaries, is that correct?
no, he wasn't a member of the bar auxiliary, no. We met them socially.
Did he know them through the bar association? Was he a friend of Dan's?
I think he might have played in a touch football league with him, but that isn't how we initially met him.
Okay, but they were friends, Dan
Yes.
and your husband.
Mhm.
Okay. And you were friends with Helen Bacard,
Mm-hmm,
and you were friends with Gail Forbes.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so you have to answer yes for the
Yes,
reporter.
yes.
So your friendship with Elizabeth was through the legal. I mean, a lot of your friends were also involved in the legal system.
I think I met her also at bar auxiliary things where our friendship might have increased, but I met her initially through my neighborhood where I moved to. Gail Forbes lived several blocks away from me, and so did Joyce Fox, who was also in the bar auxiliary, and there was mostly Marilyn Olson.
She was living in Coral Reef at that time, is that correct?
No, but they knew Gail, and that's how I met. I mean,
Okay.
they knew Betty. That's how I met them.
So you met Betty through Gail Forbes.
Yes.
I have no further questions.
Redirect. Witness be excused. Thank you very much, man. Ladies and gentlemen, since we started late, I would propose to go through to lunchtime unless anyone wants to take a recess. If you do, just stick your hand up. Seeing no hands raised, go ahead, Ms. Wells.
Yes, Your Honor, at this point, I would simply ask to have marked as people's next in order a 4-page document which is entitled Subscription Agreement and Signature Page of Pioneer Park Investors,
So marked.
signed by both Daniel Broderick and Elizabeth Ann Broderick on November 13th, 1980, as well as 4 pages of attachments.
So marked.
And I believe council had stipulated to the admission of this one.
Is that correct, Mr. Early? Yes. All right. Set the stipulation, People's 114 is received. Go ahead.
People call Dr. Park Dietz.
You do solemnly swear the testimony about to give and the matter not to employ this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Sir, could you ever seen the witness stand?